Hockey O'Clock mit Martin Pfanner wird präsentiert von Hankook Reifen. Driving. Emotion.
Achtung! Was für ein Move! Nächste Chance. Was für ein Pass zur Mitte! 1-0. Und der nächste Fight am Eis entbrennt. Hier entladen sich die Emotionen. Da haben wir doch noch was, um mit der Zunge zu schnalzen.
Die 25. und letzte reguläre Folge von Hockey O'Clock mit Martin Pfanner im Kalenderjahr 2020 bringt den Goalie-Gipfel. Jean-Philippe Lamoureux, Jürgen Penker und Gast-Experte Mike Ouzas bringen den ultimativen Masken-Talk im Corona-Jahr. Das alles und noch viel mehr jetzt bei Hockey O'Clock. Unbelievably so, it took 25 full episodes to finally get him on Hockey O'Clock. He's the goaltender with the most games played in league history. He's also the winningest goalie. He's the owner of the most shutouts in league history. He's none other than Jean-Philippe Lamoureux, or as he probably prefers, Jean-Philippe Lamoureux. The last name thing has always been bugging me, and we'll get to that in a bit. But Jean-Philippe, first of all, thanks for taking the time.
Excited to be on the podcast. My good friend Mike Ouzas on your last interview, so I got some big shoes to fill there.
A lot of goalie talk. Obviously, Mike was recorded before you, but on the pod is gonna come on a little after you. So you're spearheading the goalie only episode on Hockey O'Clock, and I'm very thankful for that. JP, when it comes to your last name, because of me being well educated in French a little bit, and a lot of French Canadian players coming in, how would you like to see your name being pronounced when we do commentary or when we mention you on air or when we talk about you?
Well, my grandmother, who passed away last year, she loved the way you guys pronounced it. So the way we say it where I'm from, it has very much a Midwestern twang to it. So it's it doesn't sound very elegant, but the way it's pronounced in Austria, since I played here, it sounds really nice.
So it's either JPL or Jean-Philippe Lamoureux. You're good with that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Glad that we figured this one out. We're recording this conversation on a very rare day off where no hockey, it's not necessarily a day off, but where no hockey is being played during the holiday season. You didn't make the trip to yesterday's, meaning Saturday's game in Bolzano, obviously a 2-0 loss against the Foxes with Salzburg. Why is that?
Well, that was just planning for from the coaching staff. They wanted to get Jesper, a young Swedish goalie, some minutes here. We got a really condensed schedule coming up the next month and a half, and they just kind of thought it would be best if I stayed home rested. And then we have, we're playing every other day this week here to start, so I'll be back in the net tomorrow versus Dornbirn, and we got a tough task in trying to get out of this losing streak, and it just kind of starts with the first one. So have to be ready to lead the charge tomorrow.
When talking about getting rest in your case, which you very rarely do, you're a family man, you're father, you're a father. How does a rest day or a day of rest really look in your life? Is there anything like rest when it comes to spending a day at home with the wife and the kids?
Well, believe it or not, my sleep quality has actually improved quite a bit since I had kids. Just in the sense that anybody who has kids, you know that your life drastically changes, and you need to have a schedule. And so as the years have gone on here, my wife and I's sleep schedule gets closer and closer to the kids' sleep schedule. So getting pretty decent sleep most nights, obviously with the exception of getting home from the late bus trips. But I do try to make the effort to, if I'm available, try to drop the kids off at school when that's in session. Although this year's with the with the shutdowns, it's been a little bit different, but try to chip in with that. And there's not really a lot of time in the afternoon for naps anymore. So if you miss sleep, you kind of got to tough it out for that day and just make sure you get to bed early that night.
When we talk about the upcoming stretch of games and obviously Salzburg wanting to get out of the slump, if we count tomorrow's, meaning Monday's game, and this podcast sees the day of light on Tuesday, you're going to have 8 games in 17 days. That's a brutal stretch, no matter how you put it. How are you trying to mentally, and if it's possible, physically prepare for such a stretch?
Well, the physical part is just making sure you're just doing all the little things to take care of your body. So for me as a goalie, it's really making sure I'm taking care of my hips. I foam rolling a lot, so working on that soft tissue for recovery. So just a combination of foam rolling, mobility, obviously your on ice work, and then with getting your cool down in after practice and after games, and then following up with some form of cold exposure, whether it be a cold bath or a cold shower, kind of whatever we have access to, and just trying to be consistent with that. That helps you physically. And then on the mental side, it's just trying to make sure you, in collaboration with our goalie coach, Marcus Kirschbaumer, taking really one game at a time, just trying to make sure that we're prepared for each opponent. And then when that game is over, just turn the page and then you kind of start the preparation process over again.
Now, a lot of listeners out there, I'm sure, are interested in your routines and how you go about your work. You don't win almost 300 games in this league by chance. So let's assume we're having a home game. How does your routine look like as regards, or when starting from getting out of bed to getting back home in terms of everything you do for your body?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's so I run goalie camps back in North Dakota, and this is kind of one of the biggest topics we try to cover at camp. So it's trying to give kids structure and kind of give them the tools so that they can feel organized, feel productive, have a plan. But for me specifically, it's just trying to be consistent on when I wake up. So waking up roughly around the same time. But for me, it's the kids fall into to the routine too. So you got to wake up, got to get them ready for school, get them out the door. Granted, if we're playing on a weekday, but trying to wake up, eat a good breakfast. I eat the same breakfast pretty much every day. I have over easy eggs on wheat toast with bacon and avocado, and then some form of berry, like a blueberry, raspberry, maybe a banana. Then bulletproof coffee and water. And I'm pretty much having that every single day. So that at least gives you good fuel to start the day. And then when I get to the rink, it's like I alluded to earlier, it's the foam rolling, the mobility work, and then getting ready for pregame skate, and then quick cool down, and then get lunch, come back. Nap time's usually, I think most hockey players are like in that hour and a half, 2 hour range. I'm probably closer to an hour and a half if I'm napping on a game day, and then just kind of that process starts over again when you get to the rink for the game.
Now you're playing a game, and let's assume it's been a physical one. How do you try to cool down at the home rink? I mean, you mentioned earlier it depends on what's available, but during home games, how do you try to take care of your body afterwards so that it doesn't necessarily hurt all too much when getting to practice next time around?
So for me, I try to go through I call it like a posture reset. So for goaltenders, your livelihood is just your hip mobility. So there's a tendency with hockey players that you tend to have a rounded back at the end of a game. So if you can kind of visualize, for goaltenders, we're in our stance, we're kind of hunched over. So our shoulders are a little bit more forward than what a natural good posture looks like. So it's for me, when I get off the ice, if I feel some knots, I'll get in there with some foam rolling. I'll have some corrective exercises to kind of activate the glutes, mobilize the groin, do some shoulder exercises to bring the shoulders back to kind of reset the posture. And basically all that's doing is that it's aligning your body so that when you show up the next day, it's like you don't have impingements, in certain parts of your body, and everything kind of does work together in a unit. So if your shoulders are off, you're going to feel it in your hips. If your ankles feel tight, that's going to go up the kinetic chain into the hips too. So it's just really trying to be cognizant of how your body feels. And if I feel tight in a certain area, just kind of over these years, I'm like, okay, I need to focus on that and make sure I work that out. So when I show up the next day, I feel good. The goal is basically to show up to the rink every day and feel close to 100%.
The reason why I'm asking all these questions, and I've got two more regarding what you just said, is that I kind of like to create a roadmap for aspiring pros or other pros that kind of shows why you're the winningest goalie in league history and why you've been so successful for such a long amount or long stretch of time. When you talked about your breakfast earlier and your breakfast routine, at what point did it hit you as a pro player, or maybe even before that, how essential nutrition is?
I mean, at the college level, where we get access to a lot of knowledgeable people. So I mean, that's where you're really introduced to, well, time of day you should eat, the types of foods you're consuming. Sometimes the nutrition side of it can be tedious. So it's like I'll see athletes that will stick with eating well, and then they'll kind of fall off the wagon for a while. And that's okay. I think if young athletes are listening to this, it's, if you kind of have a couple bad days of nutrition, just get back on track. It's natural. I mean, not everybody's not going to be perfect with it. But at least for me, the diet that I try to follow is just lots of high quality proteins, getting in a lot of green leafy vegetables, eat a lot of eggs in the morning. Do definitely caffeinate early in the morning, but I don't over caffeinate. So like with coffee for me is a tool. I think a lot of people, it's more of a comforting beverage, if you want to say it. So you have people that'll kind of sip during the day. But I just try to have just one glass in the morning, and that's kind of, you get caffeinated, you're ready, your mind is engaged. And then, obviously water, staying hydrated, really crucial. Just making sure that you're consuming the enough water during and after training, so practice or during a game. And then just consuming good proteins. Like I said, green leafy vegetables after you play, just for recovery.
Another thing that you mentioned is the importance of everything that you're doing for your hips for a TV shoot. And if you try to imagine the player or a player without any talent, the worst version of that's me. So for a TV shoot, they stuck me into a goalie uniform. And apart from the fact that I didn't really know what I was doing and how to behave and how to stop the puck, it at the very least gave me an appreciation of what you guys are doing on a day-by-day basis. If someone had told me after that shoot what the most important quote-unquote body parts would be, I would have probably gone for the knees because they were sore, or my back because it hurt. But why are the hips so important, or maybe the most important body parts for goaltenders?
Well, kind of the glute, like your glute muscles are, for kind of any sport, that's your stabilizing muscle. So if your glute isn't stabilized, your groin can't elongate. So, but everything kind of starts, at least with goaltending, it starts in the hips. So if you're tight in your hips, that's going to lead up the chain to, like you said, you having a tight back. So when I do my mobility routine, it's really head to toe. So it focuses on everything. It's not like I just go in there and I stretch groin. I just try to jump into the splits or anything like that. Everything has to kind of work in unison. So focus, I always kind of start from the bottom up. So I work on, try to get some ankle mobility in. And I think that's a really underrated, call it skill or strength technique that hockey players underutilize, in my opinion. Ankle mobility can improve your squat. It can improve your balance. Hockey players by nature, like we're really weak in our feet, because if you look at how we wear skates, we don't really activate our toes, our foot muscles. So a tough injury that you see hockey players get is that high ankle sprain. And that's usually due to, sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes you have, weird contact where guys fall on guys. But for the most part, it's just guys just aren't strong in their feet. So for me, it's just one thing without even doing any exercises is that I try to be barefoot all the time. I wear kind of a barefoot version shoe. There's a brand called Vivo Barefoot that I've been wearing for close to 6 years now. And that's just it's just a small little thing that it just helps with your ankle mobility, activating your toes. And again, it's a little thing that you probably wouldn't think about on a day-to-day basis, but it actually makes a big difference in the long run for overall joint health. Because when you have an overly cushioned shoe, you're really not activating the proper muscles to walk and run properly.
Now, if you look at your recent track record, and that to me includes when you got over to the now Better Home Ice Hockey League, in each and every season you played 50 games, with the exception of last year where it was just 35. So that's a huge amount of games that you were able to play. Do you think everything that you do for your body is part of the reason for your longevity, or are there other things factoring in?
Well, the routine is a definite factor, but the biggest thing is just a mindset. So you have to be a driven individual. So your daily routine, it becomes tedious. So I've been doing 13 years of pro hockey. There has to be a part of you that genuinely enjoys the small little things that you got to do day to day. So you have to enjoy the training. You have to enjoy the preparation for training camp, for getting ready for games. So I think the biggest thing is mindset. So if you're not driven, you're not going to have longevity. A personal goal since as long as I can remember was to play hockey for a living. It's all I wanted to do. And I would do whatever I needed to do to be better individually. I was going to explore that option, and, fitness, nutrition, anything that could help elongate the career. I was going to take full advantage of it.
Where is the drive coming from? When was that idea instilled in you that you wanted to play hockey for a career and do everything that comes with it?
It's tough to say, because I've thought about this, when you have young kids now, we're introducing them into hockey. But I think back, my father was a goaltender at the University of North Dakota, which was the same university that I played at. Going to games as a young kid, 4, 5, 6 years old is probably some of my earliest memories. Going to college hockey games, which is an incredible atmosphere. So just really falling in love with our hometown college team. But I don't know. I've always knew that I just wanted to be a hockey player. I was a rink rat growing up. I always wanted to be at the rink, be at the outdoor rink. One of the things I remember having almost like a competition with myself as a young elementary school student, where I just wanted to see how long I could stay at the rink. Like I would stay till 9:00 at night at our, there would be these outdoor ice sheets at the local elementary schools, and I would just go till they shut the lights off. And I wasn't even playing goalie some of the time. Sometimes it was just playing shinny hockey, playing forward. So I just loved to play the game. Other times I would bring my goalie equipment out and throw it on and skate outside and take shots from whoever wanted to shoot on me. So it was just always ingrained. It never felt like work. I think that's the biggest thing. So if, when I meet driven athletes, when I do these camps, you can really tell like who has it, because you give them a little piece of information and you can just see it in the individual. It just doesn't look like work to them. They're really excited to go through the struggle.
Obviously, you've been one of the best at your craft in the last decade in our league, but as you're working with a lot of athletes, and I'm sure watching a lot of other sports, is there an athlete's drive that entices you, where you say, wow, he's maybe even more driven than me?
I really enjoy watching other athletes excel at other sports. So I wasn't sure if you were specifically talking about hockey players, but
doesn't matter. Any sport.
Yeah. Like I really admire athletes with longevity. So people who've played at a high level in their sport, kind of no matter what it is. So people who jump out to me are Tom Brady, Peyton Manning in the football realm, just people who are just excellent every single year. Were champions, were winners, elevated their teammates. Individual sport athletes, I love watching Roger Federer play. Just someone who consistently good all the time, never seems like he has an off match, really conducts himself in a professional way. Admire that. Tiger Woods to a certain degree too, where how dominant he was for 10 plus years when he was still number one in the world. Really loved the way he played. He played with, and even just kind of watching him now, like it was, I'm sure anybody in our hockey community have seen him where he did the tournament with his son. So it's been really cool to kind of watch that. And you're like, wow, you probably have a lot of resemblance from Tiger when he was young. The way he swung the club, the enthusiasm he shows on the golf course, confidence. But those are just kind of some 3-4 athletes that I admired watching that were outside the hockey world.
Now, when we get to the current season that Red Bull Salzburg is having, it's been kind of an ebb and flow thing. You started right out of the gates very hot, then you lost a couple in a row, then you got to another win streak. Now you're looking at a 3-game losing streak. Why this back and forth? Why has consistency eluded Salzburg so far?
Well, one big factor is just the change in the lineup. So, this last streak here, we've had, a lot of players out that would typically be in the lineup. That's a factor. The direction Red Bull is going, like we just have a lot younger players that they're trying to elevate within the system. So that's been challenging. But I think just the biggest factor is just the for the whole league, the COVID factor. So we have positive tests on our team, takes key players out of our lineup. We've had some injuries on the back end. We've been hurting the last couple weeks here on defense, where players that we would typically have in the lineup are out right now. So I think that's kind of why. Last year it seemed like we had a real, when you have a real consistent lineup from the start of training camp all the way through, I think you tend to avoid the dips and valleys. But we'll come off a loss, and then all of a sudden we have our COVID testing, and then we lose some more players. So there's just a lot of changes. It's something new, a new adversity that players in the league just hasn't seen before, and it really shakes things up for sure.
Now, how difficult is it for you? I reckon that you'd be someone who communicates a lot with his defenseman, if not in the game, at the very least in practice. How difficult is it for you personally to go through constantly changing pairs of defensemen?
I don't think it's so difficult for me as much as it's tougher for the actual D, where they're playing with, if someone new comes in the lineup that we didn't even have training camp together. That's more challenging for them. Certainly there's tendencies or habits that you're used to seeing in your D core. So when you don't even, it's one thing to go through training camp with players, and then you get to know them, see how they play. But it's a totally different thing when there's really no rapport with the player. and then they're thrown into the lineup and they're playing, 4 games in a row with you. So there's kind of a feeling out process, in games that matter.
Now, this recent stretch of 3 straight losses, it commenced or began with a 7-0 affair in ÖEHV, followed a day later, obviously with back-to-back games by another defeat. For what reason do you think did ÖEHV have your number those 2 games? Because you won the first 2 affairs of the year, you lost the second 2. Is it because of the short lineup?
I mean, you don't want to lean on that as an excuse. I just think they were the better team on the weekend. If you kind of look at it as a whole, they were just executed much better on the offensive side of the puck. I think they definitely defended better. As a whole, we as a club, we weren't really happy. I mean, we had enough guys in the lineup to win games, and but we just didn't execute and perform the way we expect. But that's the thing with hockey is, I've always found that the game of hockey, it's really fair. If you're on a hot streak, and you don't, honor the showing up and doing the right things, you'll end up on the other side of it too, where you're gonna start losing games that maybe you deserve to win, and then you win games that you probably should have lost. So. In the long run, over the course of a season, I always find that the game is really fair. So you just have to really stick to doing things the right way with your preparation, and not kind of overreacting emotionally when you kind of go in ruts like we're in now.
Noteworthy is the first game of this losing streak. Monday a week ago against ÖEHV at a 7-0, where you got pulled after 4 goals against. Is there ever a point when one steps on the ice and concedes maybe a goal or 2 or 3 where you think, shit, I might get pulled?
I mean, yeah, I figured when the 4th one in, I'm like, well, they're going to have to shake things up. But your mindset is just, you got to stop the next shot. They were able to. We actually had a pretty good start to the game, actually, but we just, for me, I think I got to make at least probably 2 out of those 4 for sure, on those goals against in that game in particular. So some of that falls on my shoulders, just not executing, doing the job. But yeah, it's that sort of thing. It happens in the game. It's probably the first time I've been pulled in, almost probably 2 season and a half, maybe. But it happens. And, the lesson is that, I'm not going to beat myself up or lose confidence in what my ability is. I have to show up and prepare and, exude leadership, because I am the oldest player on the team. And, you can't come in and point fingers. I looked at that game, and in particular, in the game I was pulled, and, just got to be better for the guys, and I felt like that on the following game too. We lose that game, but it felt like I could have been better in a couple different plays.
But if you get the call from the bench after the 4th goal conceded, what goes through your head? What are the first couple emotions when maybe taking a seat on the bench? Is it just blankness, or is it a rush of things that go through your head?
Just probably pure anger and rage internally, to be honest. But it's just because it's, you have game plan in place, you didn't execute, you didn't do your job. So me as an individual, I'm pissed off that I didn't do what I'm expected to do. So you just get over that. But you got to skate to the bench, you got to pick up the clipboard, and then you got to keep stats for the rest of the game. So, that's the other thing, is you just got to turn the page quick, and okay, I'm on the bench now. I didn't play well. But I got to be supportive of Jesper, or young goalie going in, make sure that he has confidence, that he feels empowered, and then to try to be supportive on the bench, and then obviously just make sure I'm paying attention and doing my job, keeping the stats.
Now it's your 10th year in the league, and that not only means that you're the proud owner of 483 starts in the net, but also that there are a lot of stats about your career. And when I saw that you were pulled after 13 minutes and 19 seconds against Feyenoord, I was starting to wonder if there had ever been an earlier point where you might have gotten pulled. Do you remember, or do you pay attention to these kind of facts and stats, or don't they matter to you at all?
I mean, that's a good question. I don't, as far as the getting pulled thing, it's not something that that's at the forefront of my mind. Obviously it's, I mean, stats that are important to me are, from the goaltending thing is, we keep a stat within our team, the expected goals against. There's also a statistic called goals saved above average. So those are statistics that basically every shot in a game has a value, and based on that value, you kind of come up with a number that says this is the amount of expected goals in this game. So you want to be on the plus side of that. You want to make sure I'm saving more than what the expected goals are. And if I can cut those down, that feels like a win. Obviously, games played, you want to be good in the save percentage category, but that kind of goes hand in hand with the expected goals statistic. I think if you're on the plus side of that, your save percentage is going to be just fine. And then obviously the most important one to me is the win column. Wanting to be, I have personal goals on a certain amount of wins I want to get every 10 games. And that's usually a ballpark. If I'm executing, what my goal is within the 10 game segment, that puts our team in good position to be, for sure in the playoffs, let alone probably competing for first place.
What's your goal for such a 10 game stretch? What are you personally aiming for?
My personal goal is just having a basement floor of getting at least 6 regulation wins every 10 games. So nothing less than 6 every 10. And if you're doing that, obviously if I can exceed that, I'm going to want to try to exceed it. But my personal goal is to try to get no less than 6 wins every 10 games. And then maybe you go every 10 games, it's, you're 6-3-1. So maybe you lose one in a shootout, but you're still getting that extra point.
You know where your current winning percentage sits at in league play?
Which percentage?
Your current winning percentage. You know where it sits at?
I don't know what it would be for
because it can't be a coincidence. It sits at 60.6%. So you do win 6 out of 10 games that you play on Bet at Home Ice Hockey League ice.
Wow,
not too bad.
Exactly that. But yeah, that's I think topics I talk about at my goalie camps are how do you systemize your thought process? How do you systemize your execution as a player? Like what goals can you shoot for? And having kind of long stretch goals, which would be like achieving a championship, and then having what are called SMART goals, which would be kind of things that you do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And that's kind of how I've kind of structured my goal setting per se, is, things that I want to accomplish on a day-to-day. And then within, the say you play 10 games in a month. So my month-long goal would roughly be about that, trying to execute, getting that 6 every 10. And like I said, sometimes you'll exceed it. If I kind of notice that, it's getting pretty tight, it gives you a little bit of extra personal urgency to get the extra win, or just gives you kind of a little bit more motivation. So there's just, for me, it's always trying to have an incentive to do your best every single night.
Not to bombard you with stats and facts, but in Salzburg, you're even more successful than your previous clubs with a 77 point winning percentage. And just to get the record straight, because we were talking about your second earliest pull, for the lack of a better term, in ÖEHV the other day, your very earliest came back in 2012 on December 12th in Sneumer, where you got pulled after 12:51, again conceding 4 goals. But you remember the very earliest time that you ever had to leave the ice for a game that you started in this league?
I'm not sure. I can't honestly think. I'm trying to think back to maybe it's probably some games in junior, maybe in the USHL. I might have been pulled early, but I did play for a coach in junior where he kind of had, like, if you gave up 2 early ones, it was a really short leash. But I can't specifically. I don't know if it was any earlier than those. I mean, getting barely 10 minutes of hockey in before you get the hook isn't that great.
You might hate me for it, but it was kind of a setup question, and I'll try to educate users a little bit, because on during the very season where you got pulled against Sneumer after conceding 4 goals in less than 30 minutes, there was another game with you and Villach in Sneumer where you got not pulled, but where you got ousted after 4 minutes and 32 seconds because of a cross-check against, I think it was Richard Jarosek. So only 4 minutes and 32 seconds of time on the ice. And that might have been back in the day where some experts in the league would have considered you a hothead. Jean-Philippe Lamoureux and emotions always went together. Would you have, like, looking back, would you label the early able league goalie Jean-Philippe Lamoureux a hothead?
Probably without question, no hesitation with that. Just because it was when I came over here, there was just so much uncertainty that surrounded. So, for example, when I was playing in Ljubljana, there was so much uncertainty playing for that team. So I think part of that edge was you didn't know if there was going to be a tomorrow. Like, just with if the team was going to stay afloat, if they were going to fire me the next week. So there's just so much uncertainty. So I think that played into it a little bit with just how I felt with certain things. So it was like if on certain games where they weren't going well, that certainly was a factor kind of in the mindset early in the career. But I think once I felt like the job security was there, I was able to kind of settle down a little bit. This specific instance you're talking about in Znojmo would make Kershi, our goalie coach, laugh because he was there, and we talked about it after the game in that instance. But it was just, there was. I think I don't want to sound negative on the officials of the league, but definitely early in my career in the league, some of the officiating calls or how they structured the games was just it blew my mind, and coming from the American League. So that was an adjustment, but you got to you just kind of have to take a step back. For me, it was probably my 3rd year in the league where it was, like I said, I felt a little bit more secure with keeping a job over here, and then, hey, these people are doing their best. They're trying to do the best they can. They're doing this because they love the game of hockey just like you do. So I think just giving people a little bit longer leash has it helped my mindset for sure. And I think if you talk to the officials now, like I feel like I have a really good rapport with all the guys now. And that part of my game is, it's nowhere near kind of the part of my psyche when I play now. I think, I feel like comfortably I can say for the last 5-6 seasons for sure, it really hasn't been been a factor in my game. But if you watch, like you said, the earlier highlights earlier in the career, the fiery Frenchman, mentality was definitely a part of my game.
Now you mentioned interestingly enough the job security, but how much do experience and age factor in here as well?
I don't know. I've seen other players you can use age as a crutch, or you can use it as an asset, and it kind of comes down to individual mindset. So you'll see guys that, I feel beat up, I'm old. I think as soon as you accept the mindset that I'm old and I'm broken down, or I'm old and I can't do sort of things, like that's what you will become. I've never really, I guess on paper, I kind of look at my age and it's like, okay, yeah, it's getting up there, but I definitely don't feel like what it looks like on paper. So 36 sounds, to me, even saying 36, it sounds really old to me. But I don't feel that one bit. I feel like I've told people this, back home. So like, wow, you're still playing, you're still going over there, still going overseas every year. I'm like, yeah, I feel like I have the same urgency as when I left college. So for me, the drive to continue to play at a high level, to be the best I can be. I think part of that is I'm not really ever comparing myself to other goaltenders, or it's always comparing myself to the season before. I think that helps too. It's kind of a positive way to look at development. And I really feel like development kind of really never ends. So it's, when I go back in the summer, I feel organized and planned. I get the amount of ice time, and I schedule my training, and it's back to work, and I enjoy that process.
Now, you've been on the very top of your game for such a long time in this league. You've been the constant for many, many clubs in this league, be it Villach or Vienna, or now in your second year for Salzburg. And you were talking so much about the mental aspect of not only the game, but especially the game for goaltenders. What do you do from a mental standpoint to keep your mind sharp and focused?
Another great question. There are so many different things that you can use, like say in the game, that can kind of help you stay focused, stay in the moment. My goal is just to play to my potential every game. I feel like if I play my potential every game, I can be one of the best players on the ice. And it's just trying to prime myself to kind of be in that headspace. I try to think that I can save every single puck. It doesn't matter what happens in front of me. So part of that is, structuring your mindset to not point outward, but point inward for answers. When things go off. So for example, I got pulled in the one game in Farivar. It wasn't me looking outside for answers. It was looking inward for answers. So that's part of the mindset. The mobility, foam rolling, all that sort of part of the routine kind of is a trigger to kind of get ready, to get you in that headspace. So being consistent with that. But for me, it's just consistent. It's structure, it's habits, it's habits with your thinking. I try to be consistent with it. And I think as long as you're consistent and you kind of can get over the days where it's hard to show up to work when you're tired, or you feel not as motivated, you're gonna, my goal has always been longevity, and I feel like I've achieved it to a certain degree. But I keep wanting to kind of keep pushing it. I still feel like I haven't played my best hockey either. So.
Sticking with the mental side of things, and you conducting your goalie camps as well, working with a lot of young aspiring talent in general for listeners out there, and we could probably dedicate an entire episode to this topic, but why, from a mental standpoint, are goalies even more special than all other hockey players?
I think just goaltending by itself it definitely it's isolating. So when you play the game, you're almost playing a different sport than everybody else. The physical requirements are totally different. Your requirements, as far as how the game is played, is totally different from everybody else on the ice. You're the only player that plays the full 60 minutes. So that is unique in itself. And then just the tendency of the game where when you lose the game, they were like, in a general sense, people will say, well, the goalie was bad. That's why we lost the game. Or when you win the game, in a general sense, people will be like, well, the goaltending was great. So both of those presumptions are usually false. So it's somewhere in the middle. But with the with the mental side of it, it's like you said, you give up an early goal in a game, that can kind of shake your confidence, real quick. But you're still the same goalie. You're still the same person. So it's just being able to have that mental toughness. It's really difficult, I think, to keep that self-belief. It's like I think one of the hardest hurdles to get over, just for any athlete or for goalies specifically, is getting over the hurdle of doubt. So, if your ego or whatever is shaken for a little bit of time, do you kind of give in to that seed of doubt and you don't believe in your abilities anymore? I think that's challenging. It's something I talk about a lot with a lot of young goalies. So every summer I'm working roughly about 80 goalies a summer. Have a handful of younger prospects that are trying to get into junior ranks. One kid that has committed to the University of North Dakota. But these are the biggest things that come up every summer, is getting over fear, anxiety, doubt, and trying to give those kids tools to kind of achieve their dreams, achieve their potential. But it's things that I'm actively pursuing myself. So I think when I talk about the mental side of things, it's there's two sides of it for me. It's trying to teach it to younger kids, but it's also, again, trying to reinforce personal beliefs to make sure that I'm performing the way I need to.
Now, when I started preparing this podcast episode, when I knew that you'd be coming on, I kind of mentally separated the podcast into two parts. The second one, which is hopefully following in a couple of months' time, because there'd be so many topics to talk to you about. Obviously, your upbringing, your siblings who won Olympic gold, you playing in Alaska of all places, you coming over here. But this time around, I hope listeners appreciate, I wanted to focus on the groundwork of what makes you tick and what makes you go and what makes you great in this league. But another instance that you kept referring to, and everyone can also see it during summertime on your Instagram feed, which is @JPL Goaltending, if I'm not completely mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct.
So for all the people listening back home, please check this one out. During summertime, it appears as if you spend every free or spare minute of your time in the hockey arena or at a rink. What made you decide on starting those camps? How did that all come about?
Well, I've always worked at other people's camps, from high school on through college, and when I first started playing professionally. Originally, so the JPL brand originated in 2012, kind of in collaboration with my wife, who helps me out with the business side of stuff and helps organize camps. But it started with somebody approached me and said, we need to do a goalie camp. My local hometown was really hurting in the goalie position. And part of that was due to, there was no resources for any of the kids. Nobody wanted to do anything. So it just kind of struck a chord with me. You had a lot of kids that they were initially excited to play the position, and then they get through a season, they don't get any support. They get shelled in their first couple games. Parents are on them. But it's just like, how do you set up a kid for success when there's literally nobody there helping them? So it just started with one camp, and that one camp has turned into 5. So I do 5 weeks of training, and then probably another week, 2 weeks of individuals if ice is available for some of my other clients. But yeah, it's grassroots all the way up through college age goalies. And we have a youth camp that we do. We have one that is an elite camp that is for Bantam age through high school and sometimes junior goalies. I do an outreach camp in Las Vegas where we try to do like a hot stove coaching seminar too, where I get a lot of people that I respect in the goalie community to help out at that camp. So it's more of an outreach to go to a non-traditional hockey market, meet some new kids, maybe recruit some of them to come to the camps in North Dakota, but also gives me an opportunity to bring in some coaches that I respect to exchange ideas. We do a select camp, which is a small, more personable camp for older goalies. So some of those you'll see high-end midget, junior, and then some college goalies too that will attend that one. And then I do a camp with my brother Mario, which is more of an all-encompassing. So there's a forward camp, and then I run the goalies, and then we do a 3-on-3 at night. So I do those 5, and it consumes a lot of my summer. I think a lot of guys just want nothing to do with camps when their season is over, but I enjoy the work. I'm at the rink anyway. I'm training. I'm very regimented with my ice times and when I'm working out. But I like the routine. I like being at the rink. I like trying to teach the position and talk about ideas like we're talking about right now on this podcast. It helps me get better. It helps me think about things in a different light, see a different perspective. And it helps me grow individually too. So I just enjoy that process. And I think the biggest thing is I always see a little bit of myself in a lot of these young goalies. So I remember being that age. I'm very connected to how it felt as a young hockey player and wanting to play for a living. So if I can be a resource for kids in my hometown, I really strive to be that. Currently, kids have access to me too. When they do the camps, they can message me if they're having hard times during the season. And I try to keep an open line of communication with all of our goalies.
Now, everything that you just mentioned can be found either, for example, on Instagram at JPL Goaltending or on the website jplgoaltending.com. So for whatever reason, if 34-year-old me decides to start a hockey career and start in the goal, you'd even take on a hopeless case as myself. Is it open for everyone as long as he or she makes the trip to North Dakota?
Yeah, you could come. Like we could organize. I'd probably start, instead of throwing you in with a camp, I'd start with some individuals first just to get you started.
Well, let's see and talk after we record this conversation. But on another note, because you were mentioning that you sent or started to send people on to college, and obviously there's starting to or a pipeline's kind of starting to evolve. At what point, when talking about goaltenders, do you feel that he or she has got it? Is there ever a point, or is it totally different because you're working with totally different individuals?
Can you ask your question again? I don't really understand. Like, so you're talking about it, like when do I know that they have
becoming really, really good, maybe going on to college or maybe even becoming pro? Because a lot of times the it factor, someone has it to become really good at one's craft, gets thrown around. Is there something like he or she has it as in becoming really good, or is it just something media people want to throw around?
At least when I'm watching kids at camp, the thing that jumps out to me the most is enthusiasm. So when you're showing a kid a new drill, or you're trying to teach them a certain technique, and you can see their eyes light up. And then they just go to work and they enjoy that process. When the goalie camps can tend to be very structured. So there's you have a specific movement that we're trying to work on and we're trying to execute a certain save. But, at the end of drills, you kind of open up to, okay, it's after this initial shot, it's anything goes. And then when you see the kids that really love to compete for the puck, that's what really would jump out to a coach. So someone who has enthusiasm for the work, and then someone who is just hungry to make saves. Once you get them outside the goaltending camp structure. So that's what would jump out to me. And then certainly kids who actively seek out knowledge. So the kids that I know that want it, they're the kids that message me the most. So they want, at the end of camps, I say, if you guys have questions about anything, just message me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And the kids that are constantly asking the most questions, that are, talking, just for the last example, I messaged a goalie from Devils Lake, North Dakota yesterday, and we were talking about mindset. And he was they've had a slow start to the high school season due to the shutdowns and stuff. So they haven't been playing a lot of games yet. So we're just talking about, okay, what can we do in practice to work on mindset sort of stuff. So just kids that are constantly reaching out, that would jump out to a coach.
Always try to narrow it down on small little portions of wisdom here on the podcast. And one of my questions would have been, what are the 3 requirements one needs to have to become a successful goalie? Now, you mentioned the enthusiasm, a certain hungriness for the puck, and obviously the people who pick your brains show that they really want it. Are those the 3 requirements or the lowest common denominator that you need to bring to the table, or is there something else that you might add here?
Well, you definitely need some athletic talent for sure. So if you're going to play at the professional level and play at an elite level, like there needs to be an element of athletic talent that's, somewhat genetic, I would say. But I'm definitely a believer in somebody who has the mental toughness, the grit to do the work. That athlete will outperform the talented kid every time. They'll achieve more longevity every time. So the biggest thing is just having that element of grit, and then I think not being afraid of failure. So there's a phrase that I try to say in camp where I say failure is your friend. Okay, you're going to fail a lot. You're going to have bad games. You're going to be unconfident after a certain practice, but you show up and you do the same preparation every single day. You try to improve a little bit. Maybe you can tinker with your routine and add something that can help improve your performance, your mindset, your strength training. But as long as you kind of have that approach, I think you're going to outlast everybody, kind of like the war of attrition. So it's, you kind of, if you can keep that element of grit, you'll be the last one standing.
See, I got naturally ousted when you mentioned that you need to have a certain athletic ability. So I guess we can save ourselves the conversation after this pod. 2 more things I wanna touch based on, obviously, one, when talking about all-time greats, and in our league history, you are considered one of the greats, not only because of the records and the longevity and everything. Is there another goalie's play you kind of marvel at, or that at the very least raises your eyebrow, that makes you think, okay, he's really good?
I just have such an admiration for goalies in general. I love watching other goalies from different leagues. But a lot of these kids that are coming up in this new NHL is the athleticism they show, their technical structure, their compete ability, and just at a younger and younger age. So I just play goalies that I love to watch in the National Hockey League right now. I kind of have an affinity for the Russians at the moment. I love watching Vasilevsky. Love watching kind of these new kids coming up. Shesterkin is very good. Even Georgiev, the backup there, is very good for a young goalie. Enjoy watch. I think I'm a little bit partial to UC Saros in Nashville just because he's a small guy. Really love watching the smaller goalies do well, but I think UC Saros might be one of the best puck trackers in the world right now. And it's just out of necessity. If, as a small goalie playing at the NHL level, if you're not a freak at puck tracking, you're not going to survive. And his puck tracking is unbelievable. So I really enjoy watching him. Carey Price, obviously, he's kind of the technical model that everybody loves to watch. I think Carter Hart is going to be an emerging superstar. He's mentally dialed in, mentally tough as I've seen coming up. I think he's going to be great for a long time. But there's just so many guys coming up. Even this the new Russian kid that got drafted in the first round, Askarov, right now at the World Juniors. I think he's going to be a stud. A lot of fun to watch. I would just say, I've kind of been keeping my eye on Russia. I think they're doing something really well with their goalies right now. They have some really good coaching and some good structure with some of their goalies. In particular, there's a coach named Oleg Ramashkov who's doing some great work with a lot of these young goalies, and they kind of tend to play similar, but they have freak athleticism with technical structure and an insane compete level. So a lot of these guys are coming out of Russia are going to be really, really good in the next coming years. I think the other one too is this kid that I'm excited about, Ilya Sorokin, who just signed with the Islanders. I think he's going to be a really good goalie too.
Gonna find out very soon, but no reason to not believe you and what you think those goalies are gonna be. The last question leads us back to league play that's coming up. Obviously, a tough stretch for Salzburg. What's the recipe to get back on track? Is it the 6 out of 10 rule that you try to bring to the table, or is it something else to get back to more consistent times?
Well, just for us as a group, we're starting to get some bodies back. That'll actually help with some of our depth. I just think, we just have to play a more responsible zone entry game, avoiding kind of some turnovers that are kind of unforced, in my opinion. I think we as a group, we have a deep level of belief in each other. When we're playing well, I really like our team. Like I said, the players out of the lineup, I think, was a big factor in kind of the skid a little bit. I think it just kind of, for us, it starts with one really solid 60-minute effort. I think we're going to try to do that tomorrow. And it just starts with one. And kind of like you've said, our team has been a little bit streaky. So I think if we get one, we'll get on a good roll here and kind of play like we're capable of playing. Like I said, with a full lineup, I really like our club. I like our chances.
All the best for the upcoming endeavors. Thanks so much for taking such extensive time, and hope to have you on the pod sometime soon to talk about all the other topics that we couldn't really fit into this episode.
Sure, would love to. Thanks for having me on, and I hope the fans enjoy some of the tidbits here, and appreciate what you guys do for our league and trying to grow the game.
Hervorragende Kontrolle auf dem Eis sowie auf der Straße. Genau das bietet der neue Winter-Allrounder iSept Evo 3 des Partners der österreichischen Eishockeyliga Hankook Reifen. Wie die Spieler auf dem Eis benötigst auch du in der Winterzeit pure Kontrolle auf der Straße, unabhängig von der Wetterlage. Der mit Bestnoten ausgezeichnete Hankook Winterreifen iSept Evo 3 ist dein sicherer Partner. Weitere Infos unter www.hankooktire.com. Das ist www.hankooktire.com.
Mittendrin in Edmonton, mittendrin in der Bubble, mittendrin beim U20-Nationalteam. Das ist auch diese Woche wieder das Motto bei Hockey O'Clock mit Martin Pfanner. Und es ehrt mich sehr, dass gerade nach einem so eindeutigen Auftaktspiel, nämlich dem 11:0 gegen die USA, der Goalie-Trainer des österreichischen U20-Nationalteam der Equipe sich die Zeit nimmt. Das ist niemand geringerer als Jürgen Penker. Und Jürgen, danke, dass du so früh am Morgen tatsächlich auch die Zeit nimmst.
Denn ich sage danke und ich freue mich.
Jürgen, das Spiel war gestern Abend um 19:30 Uhr Ortszeit. Das ist dann bis circa 10 herum gegangen. Wir zeichnen dieses Gespräch schon wieder um 6 Uhr in der Früh deiner Zeit aus. Wie sieht der Ablauf für dich als Goalie-Trainer von nach einem Spiel, das so spät endet, bis so früh am Morgen, wo du dann wieder Interviews mit mir führen musst, offenbar aus? Was hat sich da zwischen Spielende und jetzt alles ereignet?
Ja, wir kommen als Coaches-Staff zurück zum Hotel mit der Mannschaft, haben dann was gegessen. Dann warten wir meistens, bis die ganzen Spieler fertig sind. Dann werden natürlich wir Coaches sitzen noch kurz zusammen und reden über das Spiel, über Verletzungen, über die Aufstellung, wie der nächste Tag ausschaut, weil wir haben auch einen Tag, muss man dann anpassen für nach so einem Spiel. Und ja, dann zurück aufs Zimmer, dann schaut man sich noch Video an, hilft die anderen Coaches beim Taggen für Spiel noch. Und ja, dann wird es dann schon einmal 2 in der Früh und dann schlaft man ein paar Stunden.
Insofern ehrt es mich noch viel mehr, dass du tatsächlich auch die Zeit nimmst. Möchte auch viele der Dinge, die du angesprochen hast, auch in der nächsten halben, dreiviertel Stunde versuchen einzugehen. Aber erst einmal, weil du schon die Videos und das Taggen angesprochen hast. Der Videocoach des österreichischen U20-Nationalteams, auch kein ganz Unbekannter mit Flo Mühlstein. Wie sieht deine Zusammenarbeit mit ihm aus? Was gibt's da für Vorabsprachen, was dann auch das Videostudium anbelangt?
Ja, der Flo ist ja nachgerückt als Security Coach. Der war in St. Pölten in dem Bubble-System dabei, dass wenn von uns einer krank wird, dass er als extra Coach schon mitfliegen kann. Er hat eine super Arbeit gemacht und darum haben wir dann entschieden in St. Pölten, oder der Roger natürlich, hat entschieden, dass der Flo mitfährt und er dann den Videocoach übernimmt. Normalerweise hätte ich das dazu gemacht, weil ich das auch in Linz mache. Und jetzt die Zusammenarbeit ist super. Also mit Flo ist ein lustiger Kerl. Habe ihm das alles gelernt jetzt in den letzten Tagen und sitzt aber nichtsdestotrotz immer noch neben ihm, dass wenn irgendwas passiert, weil ab und zu ist es ein bisschen tricky mit den ganzen Verbindungen. Aber ich sitze neben ihm beim Spiel, er taggt live und ich kann mich dann umso mehr dann aufs Spiel konzentrieren und versuche so ein bisschen das Ei in der Sky zu sein.
Wie sezierst du so ein Spiel? Und natürlich gab es da jetzt viel zu sezieren, was Gegentore anbelangt und Shots on Goal, keine Frage. Aber so ganz generell, wie ist die Herangehensweise? Was sind für dich als Goalie-Coach relevante Szenen für deine Schützlinge?
Naja, für mich, ich schaue das ganze Spiel natürlich. Ich versuche natürlich auch irgendwas zu entdecken, was ich dann die Coaches in der Drittelpause mitbringen kann. Ob es irgendwelche Veränderungen, ob die sich irgendwie verändert haben, rein vom Spielsystem her. Aber natürlich ist für mich wichtig, wie schauen unsere Rush-Situationen aus, wie viele Rush-Situationen geben wir ab, wie schaut unsere D-Zone-Coverage aus. Also ich konzentriere mich natürlich durch das, dass meine Schützlinge im Tor stehen, konzentriere ich mich am meisten natürlich auf die Torleute und welche Situationen sie im Spiel gegen sich haben.
Wie funktioniert da dann auch die Zusammenarbeit? Klarerweise beginnt das Torhüterspiel schon in der Abwehr mit den Vorderleuten und wie die sich verhalten. Wie versuchst du mit den Coaches, die für die Defensive verantwortlich sind, dann ins Gespräch zu gehen beziehungsweise dich zu arrangieren?
Ja, ich meine, das ist ja ein Prozess über mehrere Wochen. Wir arbeiten an diesem Coverage, wir arbeiten an die ganzen Spielsituationen. Aber im Großen und Ganzen, sage ich einmal, ich trainiere meine Torleute so, dass sie eigentlich jede Situation dagegen stemmen können. Also wir kennen uns nicht zu viel, wir müssen wissen, was unsere Mannschaft für System spielt. Wir müssen auch mit der Mannschaft da dann kommunizieren, aber im Großen und Ganzen ist wichtig, dass wir auf die Scheiben konzentrieren und jede Situation einfach spielen, wie sie auf uns zukommt.
Es war der gestrige 26. Dezember für Teams aus deutschsprachigen Ländern wahrscheinlich nicht der allzu erfolgreichste in puncto Junior Hockey. Deutschland hat mit 2:16 das Nachsehen gegen Team Canada gehabt, Österreich eben mit 0:11 gegen Team USA. Wie war so die Stimmung danach im Lockerroom bei Team Austria?
Ja, wie gesagt, wenn man so verliert, ist es nie einfach. Also ich glaube nicht, dass das möglich ist, wenn man so hoch und man hat auch diesen wirklichen Klassenunterschied gestern gesehen, dann ist das nie einfach. Und das ist für uns der Job jetzt, ist der wichtigste, dass die Jungs heute recovern, dass wir heute ein gutes Gefühl wieder zurückkriegen, dass wir positive Sachen finden, dass man eben nicht irgendwo total in ein Loch reinfällt. Das wäre jetzt nicht.
Wie gehst du dann insbesondere mit Sebastian Wraneschitz, der den Löwenanteil der Schüsse abbekommen hat und dann aber vielleicht auch mit Jakob Brandner um? Was sind da so deine Fokuspunkte in der Arbeit mit den beiden?
Also der Sebi hat erstens einmal wirklich eine herausragende Partie gespielt gegen die USA. Er war sicher der Großteil im ersten Drittel, dass wir mit 1:0 in die Kabine gegangen sind. Er hat wirklich eine Bombenpartie gespielt. Was ist da meine Aufgabe? Also beim Sebastian muss man immer ein bisschen bremsen. Der Sebastian ist wie ein bisschen ein Rennpferd. Der will immer noch mehr und noch mehr. Und gestern war es dann körperlich am Limit, sage ich mal. Und den muss man eher zügeln als wie pushen. Aber sonst, wie gesagt, jeden Tag vorbereiten, ein bisschen ein Konzept drinnen haben, wie man das angeht bei so einer WM. Und wie gesagt, ich bin zum Glück nur für sie da. Das ist für mich ein Job, den ich sehr gerne mache. Und dann ich versuche meine Torleute ein bisschen zu lesen, auch wie sie kommen in die Kabine, wie schauen sie aus. Habe ich das Gefühl, sie sind müde, dann geht man aufs Eis und tut das Gleiche. Ich glaube, ich arbeite sehr viel mit Gespiel ein bisschen, dass ich meine Torleute anschaue, wie weit sind sie in der Lage, diese Übungen, was ich für heute gedacht habe, auch umzusetzen. Und wenn ich merke, dass es zu schwer wird, dann muss man sofort abbremsen und zurückgehen. Weil die Kontrolle für mich das Wichtigste ist im Tormann-Bereich.
Jetzt hat Sebastian Wraneschitz die Partie gestern im dritten Drittel verlassen. Es liegt auch zwischen der Aufzeichnung dieses Podcasts und der Erscheinung noch ein weiteres U20-Spiel gegen Schweden zwischendrin, falls es dort aber nicht geklärt worden sein sollte. Was genau hat ihn denn geplagt und wie steht's um weitere Einsätze für ihn beim Turnier?
Ja, der Sebi hat gestern im letzten Drittel einfach Krämpfe gekriegt. Was ich aber vorwegnehmen muss, ist, das hat nichts mit seiner körperlichen Verfassung zu tun. Der Sebi ist wahrscheinlich in Österreich einer der besttrainiertesten Torleute, hat da wirklich mega gute Tests gehabt in Wien. Aber es ist natürlich klar, bei so einer Anspannung, so einem Erlebnis auch, das ist der mentale Bereich extrem gefordert. Und der Sebi hat ein super Spiel gespielt und hat dann aber im letzten Drittel Krämpfe gekriegt und dann bei einer Rush-Situation den Schläger dann auf die Schiene gekriegt und da muss man dann als Tormann dagegen drucken und da hat er dann total zugemacht, der Muskel, und darum haben wir müssen dann rausnehmen. Aber er war natürlich erledigt nach dem Spiel gestern, aber es geht ihm schon wieder besser und heute werden wir schauen, dass wir ihn so gut wie möglich wieder hinbringen und dann werden wir entscheiden, wie wir gegen Schweden tun.
Das ist schon angesprochen und will da nicht auf Team Austria herumhacken in keinster Weise, sondern einfach nur versuchen für Fans hierzulande, die, wie vielleicht an meine Wenigkeit, jetzt nicht allzu viele Nachwuchs- oder Junior-Hockey-Partien schauen, das einfach einordnen zu können. Sebastian Wraneschitz hat gestern 68 Schüsse auf sein Tor abgefeuert bekommen. Kannst du dich noch erinnern, was vielleicht bei dir so der Höchstwert war, beziehungsweise ab wie vielen Schüssen, wenn man das überhaupt an einer Zahl festmachen kann, du als Goalie dann denkst, boah, heute ist aber wirklich anstrengend?
Nein, ich kann mich nicht mehr erinnern, dass meine meisten Schüsse ergänzt waren. Ja, die Schüsse sind ein Teil von dem ganzen Spiel, ist natürlich eine Wahnsinnszahl, dass man über 70 Schüsse abgibt in einem Spiel. Aber man darf nicht vergessen, es gehört noch mehr dazu. Schüsse, wo geblockt werden, Schüsse, wo das Tor nicht treffen. Trotzdem Rasch-Situationen oder Situationen im Drittel, wo gepasst wird, wo Seitenwechsel gemacht wird. Also es sind ja nicht nur die Schüsse, wo wir Torleute arbeiten müssen, sondern da gehört noch viel, viel mehr dazu. Und es kann auch sein, dass ein Spiel nur 50 Schüsse hat, aber trotzdem sehr, sehr anstrengend ist. Aber es war natürlich gestern eine Ausnahmesituation für uns alle, glaube ich, dass wir auf diesem Niveau spielen haben dürfen. Und wir haben aber auch gesehen, dass noch sehr viel Arbeit vor uns liegt.
Einer der vielen Gründe, vielleicht auch dieses Klassenunterschieds, schlicht und ergreifend natürlich Dichte und Breite. Der ÖEHV U20-Kapitän Marco Rossi ist der einzige First-Round-Draft-Pick, der den Team Austria aufbietet. Auf der Gegenseite waren gestern allein 9 im Jahr 2020 mit dabei. Wenn du diesen Klassenunterschied mal müsstest versuchen, in Worte zu fassen, wie würde das ausfallen aus deiner Perspektive?
Das ist schwer. Also, ja, wie du es angesprochen hast, wir haben mit Marco einen First-Round-Pick, ein Ausnahmetalent. Und Team Kanada hat, glaube ich, 20 in der ganzen Mannschaft. Amerika hat, glaube ich, die Hälfte der Mannschaft ist First-Rounder. Also ich glaube, fast alle sind gedraftet. Wir haben natürlich auch Pech gehabt. Wir haben mit dem Nickel und mit dem Zündel und manche Spieler durch Covid und Umstände, was wir haben. Wir haben ein paar Spieler verloren und das muss ich betonen. Also der Mannschaft gestern, da darf man ja nichts dagegen sagen. Die haben alle probiert und gekämpft bis zum Schluss. Aber es war im ersten Drittel, haben wir noch mithalten können. Oder mithalten. Wir haben ein gutes Scoreboard erhalten können, aber wir haben eigentlich von Anfang an gemerkt, dass Amerika einfach sehr, sehr stark ist. Aber wir dürfen auch nicht vergessen, auf was für einen Markt der Amerika zugreifen kann und wie viele Eishockeyspieler wir haben. Und natürlich mit Hockey Kanada und USA ist natürlich auch ein riesen Development Center da dahinter. Und das ist sicher was wir von da mitnehmen müssen als Österreich, dass einfach das Development in Österreich noch mehr Fokus und noch mehr Zeit braucht, dass man da mehr Rossis entwickeln.
Auf das möchte ich dann auch ganz am Ende noch eingehen, vielleicht dann Schlüsse für künftige U20 WMs, aber alles, was den Unterbau betrifft, möchte zuvor aber noch ganz gerne fragen, ob du uns ein ganz klein wenig mitnimmst in den Lockerroom. Es geht in diese Auftaktpartie. Die ganze Mannschaft, die seit 3 Wochen sich nur auf dieses eine Spiel beziehungsweise auf dieses eine Turnier vorbereitet, darf endlich fürs Bewerbsspiel aufs Eis gehen. Was war so die Message vom Coaching-Staff direkt vor es für die Mannschaft aufs Eis gegangen ist?
Ja, dass wir Vollgas und Spaß haben da draußen. Also wir haben eine sehr, sehr harte paar Wochen gehabt. Wir haben auch sehr viel Stress, sage ich einmal, gehabt mit diese ganz neue Situation für uns alle gewesen. Quarantäne in St. Pölten, dann Covid-Fälle, dann wieder rüberfliegen, da wieder in Quarantäne. Und auch jetzt, das ist wirklich nur Hotel und Eishalle, es gibt nichts anderes. Alles ist abgesperrt. Also total neue Situation, dann AWM, dann USA. Also da kommen sehr viele Faktoren zusammen für die Spieler, was mental einfach extrem zehrt und wo man sich natürlich drauf freut, aber auch wirklich sehr viel Kraft kostet. Aber die Message war ganz klar, dass wir das, was wir im Camp jetzt trainiert haben und versuchen, dass wir das versuchen umzusetzen und dass wir frech spielen und dass wir versuchen, so gut wie möglich Eishockey zu spielen mit Vollgas.
Weil du die mentale Belastung angesprochen hast, die ist natürlich bei den Spielern gegeben, aber logischerweise auch bei den Coaches, kein gewohntes Umfeld, keine gewohnten Leute zu Weihnachten, nicht mit den Liebsten, auch wenn es heuer wahrscheinlich der kleinere Kreis geworden wäre, beisammen zu sein. Wie gehst du persönlich mit dieser mentalen Herausforderung um?
Ja, es ist ganz was anderes gewesen und die Zeit ist sicher nicht einfach geworden. Am Anfang ist das alles kein Problem und dann ist man im Hotel und dann sieht man seine Freunde, was man Wochen oder Monate nicht gesehen hat und ich habe natürlich Glück, der Phil ist dabei, ist einer meiner besten Freunde, das hilft natürlich, aber ja, Weihnachten ist dann schon ein bisschen was anderes gewesen, man ist es gewohnt, mit der Familie zu feiern, man ist gewohnt, dass man Leute um sich hat, wo man das ganze Jahr verbringt und Familie. Aber ich glaube, wir haben das echt super gelöst da. Wir haben ein gemeinsames Abendessen gehabt. Und das war eigentlich ein lustiger Abend. Die Spieler haben ein bisschen was gemacht. Aber nichtsdestotrotz, das Ganze da ist sicher nichts Alltägliches und man müssen sich anpassen, aber im Großen und Ganzen geht es uns, glaube ich, alle ganz gut. Aber ich glaube, wir sind da dann alle froh, wenn wir wieder in Österreich ankommen.
Und dann vielleicht auch das Turnier in einem Jahr unter anderen Voraussetzungen dann miterleben könnt, weil es immer wieder oft Thema ist und auch gefragt wird, wie denn so das Quarantäne-Entertainment ist. Sie musstet ja alle 4 Tage im Hotelzimmer sein. Essen wurde vor die Tür geliefert. Niemand durfte raus, niemand durfte rein. Es gab zwar ein paar Zoom-Meetings, aber was war so dein Zeitvertreib of choice, wenn man so will, innerhalb dieser 4 Tage, um die Zeit dann auch wirklich rumzubringen?
Ja, das war wie ein bisschen, kann man es vergleichen wie im Gefängnis. Also wir haben alle solche Armbänder gekriegt, wo ein Tracking-System im Zimmer war. Und ja, 4 Tage haben wir wirklich gar nicht das Hotelzimmer nicht verlassen dürfen. Ja, war was anderes. Aber wie ich vorhin gesagt habe, also es ist eigentlich ganz gut gegangen. Ich habe natürlich ein bisschen gearbeitet, auch das Linzer Eishockey verfolgt und habe da ein bisschen die Partien geschnitten. Habe dort meine Torleute angeschaut, habe gelesen, habe Podcasts gehört von dir. Und ja, also das ist ganz gut gegangen.
Jetzt geht's am gestrigen Tag gegen Team USA mit nur einem 0:1 Rückstand in die Kabine. Inwieweit wurde das als Erfolg gewertet? Wie fällt dann da auch die Ansprache der Coaches, vielleicht auch von Head Coach Roger Bader aus?
Wir haben gestern nicht mehr viel über das Spiel mit den Spielern geredet. Ich glaube, dass die Spieler waren müde. Die Spieler waren natürlich auch enttäuscht. Wir haben noch kurz erwähnt, wie das Programm für die nächsten Stunden und für den nächsten Tag ausschaut. Und das war es in die Richtung dann.
Wollte noch spezifisch auf die erste Drittelpause eingehen, eben weil es nur mit einem 0:1 in die Kabine gegangen ist. Inwieweit ist das als Erfolg gewertet worden? Spricht man über sowas, hey Jungs, wir sind dran, beziehungsweise noch voll drinnen, oder lässt man da die Spieler noch den ersten 20 Minuten und dann einem relativ eindeutigen Ausschussverhältnis von 3:22 aus Sicht von Team Austria erst einmal alleine und sagt da einfach gar nichts?
Ja, wie gesagt, Roger hat da schon was erwähnt. Ich war da nicht in der Kabine, weil ich oben war im Video, habe müssen wieder am Weg nach oben gehen. Aber natürlich haben wir gewusst, dass wir zwar am Scoreboard noch dabei sind, aber die Schussagenz und auch der Spielanteil von Amerika war natürlich enorm. Aber nichtsdestotrotz war man zu diesem Zeitpunkt noch im Spiel und hat sicher gesagt, dass auf eine Art, dass wir weiterhin frech Eishockey spielen sollen und weiterhin versuchen sollen, so schnell wie möglich arbeiten.
Du hast in deiner aktiven Karriere viele Spiele gewonnen, logischerweise auch viele Spiele verloren. Wie bereitet man seine Torleute noch dazu, durch die Bank junge Torleute darauf vor, dass es vielleicht, wenn es gut läuft, ein Mini-Erfolgserlebnis gibt, aber wenn es schlecht läuft, am Ende des Turniers vielleicht dann einfach 4 eindeutige Niederlagen zu Buche stehen?
Ja, das ist sicher was, wo man damit rechnen kann oder zumindest das könnte passieren, da hast du vollkommen recht. Ich glaube, dass nach dem Spiel jeder weiß in der Mannschaft, dass es sehr, sehr hart wird auf diesem Niveau gegen diese Gegner. Wir haben natürlich auch schwere Gruppen. Und wie stelle ich meine Torleute ein? Ich glaube, dass wir haben das über die Wochen jetzt schon besprochen, was auf uns zukommen könnte. Aber für uns ist wichtig, dass wir verstehen, jeder nächste Schuss ist der wichtigste. Also wir konzentrieren uns auf den nächsten Schuss, der auf uns zukommt. Und weil der nächste ist immer der wichtigste von alle.
Jetzt hast du in Linz logischerweise deine Schützlinge mit David Kickert und mit Luca Kratschner. Die Zusammenzüge, die Zusammenkünfte im Team, auch Covid-19 bedingt, nicht ganz so häufig wie eigentlich wahrscheinlich von allen gewünscht. Jetzt sind die 3 Auserwählten, die in Kanada für das ÖEHV-Nationalteam das Torhüten, eben Sebastian Raneschitz, eben Brandner und Sommer. Wie ist es für dich? Und mit Sommer arbeitest du natürlich auch bei den Black Wings zusammen. Wie ist es dann für dich, mit Torleuten zu arbeiten, die du nicht ganz so häufig siehst?
Ja, es ist ein bisschen anders wie im Verein. Im Verein ist meine Aufgabe, sage ich mal, für mich, dass ich Torleute entwickle, dass ich ihnen sage, wie sie spielen. Da ist eher so ein bisschen mehr so, dass ich ihnen was vorgebe, wie ich glaube, dass ich einen Tormann sehe, dass er international und wie er spielen sollte. Und da ist es natürlich ein langer Prozess und da redet man viel mehr über Tormann-Systeme und über wie spielt man im Tor und was ist wichtig und so. Und wenn ich ins Nationalteam komme, ändert sich ja das ein bisschen, weil natürlich die Torleute anders ausgebildet werden in die Vereine und da ist die Zeit nicht oder auch nicht meine Aufgabe, dass ich einen Tormann verändere in seiner Spielweise. Ich gebe natürlich meinen Input, wenn ich das Gefühl habe, dass das ein Input wäre, wo ihm helfen würde, wo er auch umsetzen kann für das Nationalteam. Aber sonst ist es mehr meine Aufgabe, dass ich schaue, dass sie alles haben, dass sie am Eis die richtigen Belastungen kriegen, dass sie Übungen kriegen, Spielsituationen, wo ich glaube, dass sehr, sehr wichtig sind. Und mehr so in die Richtung, dass sie sich vorbereiten, dass sie ein gutes Gefühl haben.
Wie hält man dann auch während der Saison Kontakt? Jetzt ist es mit Sebastian Raneschitz und Leon Sommer logischerweise etwas einfacher, weil sie im eigenen Land auch greifbarer sind. Aber wie verhält sich das zum Beispiel mit einem Jakob Brandner, der aktuell im finnischen Nachwuchs werkt?
Muss ich sagen, es war sehr, sehr gut. Ich habe mit dem Tormann-Trainer vom Jakob eigentlich wirklich, sage ich mal, alle 2 Wochen ständigen Kontakt gehabt. Er war wirklich super. Er hat mir Spiele vom Jakob zusammengeschnitten, die Clips, und hat mir das bei WhatsApp geschickt oder bei E-Mail. Also den Jakob habe ich über das ganze Jahr immer wieder, oder das Jahr, wo er gespielt hat, immer wieder ein Video gekriegt. Bin mit ihm in Kontakt gewesen und das Gleiche auch mit dem Sebastian. Sebastian ist natürlich einfacher, weil er bei uns in der Liga auch gespielt hat. Ich kenne sehr viele Leute noch in Wien, weil ich selber dort gespielt habe. Also von dem her habe ich mich sehr gut informieren über den Sebi. Und dass es dann der Leon geworden ist, den sehe ich jeden Tag fast in Linz.
Wie gut vernetzt ist die internationale Goalie-Coaches-Szene, beziehungsweise gibt es ein Szenario, wo es für dich schwierig beziehungsweise unmöglich wäre, Game-Tape eines potenziellen Prospects zu bekommen?
Na, das ist heutzutage ganz, ganz einfach. Wir haben auch im Verein schon Systeme oder Plattformen, wo, so wie Instat oder Sport Contract, wo alle Spiele fast von der ganzen Welt ein Portal ist, wo ich mir anschauen kann, wo sogar vielmal schon Situationen geschnitten sind, also wo man den Namen eingibt und dann sieht man die Saves, was der gemacht hat oder wo er dann seine Tore kriegt. Also da sind wir schon sehr, sehr weit. Die Internetseiten sind schon richtig gut.
Du bist in deinem 6. Jahr als Torhütertrainer in Linz. Du machst das insgesamt 4. Jahr jetzt auch die U20 mit. Wie hat sich das Goalie-Coaching oder das Goalie-Training in diesen nur 5 Jahren verändert? Was hat sich da vielleicht dann auch neu ergeben? Und das ist ein Thema, das weiß ich schon, da könnte man jetzt stundenlang drüber reden, aber versuchen wir es mal so kompakt wie möglich zusammenzufassen.
Ich glaube, in den letzten 5 Jahren hat sich nicht so viel verändert. Also ich glaube schon, dass vor allem jetzt die Teach noch Alea und franco-kanadisch ein bisschen in die Richtung, aber zu 90% sage ich mal Alea und mit vielleicht 10% von meinem eigenen Erlebnis oder so wie ich spiele, noch vielleicht ganz kleine Veränderungen, wenn man überhaupt über Veränderungen reden kann. Aber nein, ich habe mein System in Linz oder so wie das Systemcoach habe ich nicht viel verändert in den letzten 5 Jahren. Ich glaube, dass der Unterschied noch einmal 5 Jahre weiter davor war. Da war eine Riesenveränderung im Tormann-Bereich. Aber in den letzten 5 Jahren hat sich rein vom System nicht sehr viel verändert. Was ein großer Punkt ist sicher Stickhandling wird immer wichtiger, dass die Torleute wirklich gut mitspielen können. Und einer der größten Faktoren, was sich in den letzten Jahren jetzt rauskristallisiert ist, die Körpergröße ist für NHL Scouts oder dass man die NHL macht, einfach über 6'1".
Über 6'1 bedeutet konkret über 1,83, 84?
Naja, 1,85, ja.
Weil du es angesprochen hast, du lehrst oder versuchst das sehr nach Aller zu interpretieren. Die Rede vom legendären Torhüter-Trainer François Aller. Was ist denn, wenn du es so zusammenfassen müsstest, und auch das ist wieder schwierig mit der Kürze der gegebenen Zeit, denn so die Schule nach Aller, wie würdest du das beschreiben?
Die Schule nach Aller würde ich beschreiben in kompakt zu sein, ruhig zu sein und versuchen, so wenig wie möglich durch den Körper zu kriegen.
Jetzt ist das im Eishockey eine der größten, will nicht sagen Floskeln, aber man hört sehr häufig in Interviews, die Mannschaft war nicht kompakt genug, der Torhüter muss kompakt sein. Was bedeutet kompakt sein in puncto Torhüterspiel?
Kompakt ist, dass man versucht, nicht zu viel mal in so eine Desperate Mode zu gehen. Das heißt, wenn man Side-to-Side oder nach Rebounds oder einfach, wenn es schnell wird, dass man versucht, den Körper hinter die Scheibe noch zu kriegen, dass man keine Scheiben durchkriegt. Und eben, wie gesagt, dass man nicht zu viel muss in diesen Desperate-Modus gehen als Tormann.
Heißt, wenn dir der Pfanner auf der anderen Seite des Atlantiks jetzt sagen würde, dass seine Spezialität, wenn überhaupt die Desperation Saves wären, dann wüsstest du automatisch, die Karriere wird wahrscheinlich im Tor keine allzu lange sein.
Ja, es ist meistens so, dass diese Big Saves im Desperate-Modus sind natürlich sehr toll für die Fans und für die Highlight-Videos, aber meistens ist es dann so, dass als Tormann-Trainer beim Video am nächsten Tag ist, irgendwas falsch rennt davor, vor dem Schuss und darum lassen wir die Highlights, die Highlight-Saves versuchen wir eher nicht zu machen.
Jetzt bin ich eventuell drauf und dran, meine aktive Eishockey-Karriere gar nicht erst starten zu lassen, sondern dann auch schon wieder abzuhaken. Möchte noch ganz kurz beim theoretischen Background des Spiels bleiben. Kann mich an ein Interview erinnern, das ich vor vielen Jahren mit dem damaligen finnischen Torhütertrainer der Wiener Capitals geführt hatte, der tatsächlich seine Abschlussarbeit an der finnischen Universität über Eishockey-Goaltending geschrieben hat. Und einerseits natürlich spannend, dass man sowas studieren kann, aber wo glaubst du, kann das Spiel, das ja immer weiter seziert wird und verfeinert wird, noch hingehen? Worüber werden wir uns in puncto Hockey, Goaltending in vielleicht dann auch 5 Jahren unterhalten?
Das ist eine sehr, sehr schwere Frage. Das ist das, was, glaube ich, jeder Tormann-Trainer versucht herauszufinden, was könnte die Veränderung sein, dass man einen Schritt voraus ist. Ich glaube, dass der Tormann-Bereich so detailliert ausgearbeitet ist, dass es sehr schwer wird, da irgendwie großartig was zu verändern. Aber ich glaube einfach, dass es noch detaillierter wird, noch kompakter wird. Ich glaube, dass Torleute noch mehr zurück ins Tor müssen, dass sie Wege schaffen. Aber im Großen und Ganzen zurzeit sehe ich das Tormanns-Spiel sehr, sehr schwer, dass sich vom System oder sagen wir von den Bewegungen her oder so, dass sich da irgendwie großartig was ändern wird in den nächsten Jahren. Also die Torleute werden sicher athletischer, sie werden noch schneller, sie werden noch Augen-Hand-koordinativer. Das sieht man jedes Jahr, dass die Jungen was nachkommen, die kennen einfach das, was die davor kennen, noch ein bisschen besser. Und wenn man sich da jetzt bei der WM Torleute anschaut, die sind einfach wirklich sehr gut ausgebildet und haben extreme Fähigkeiten.
Inwieweit wandert da dann dein Auge auch dann zu den Gegnern rüber? Kannst du da ein Eishockeyspiel auch ganz normal anschauen oder blickst du immer auf die Torleute? Schaust du dann auch mal aus dem Augenwinkel auf einen Dustin Wolf, der gestern das Shoutout für Team USA zu verantworten hatte, oder blickst du wirklich nur auf deine eigenen Schäfchen?
Nein, ich bin ja da wie ein Fan. Nein, aber natürlich, wenn wir spielen, bin ich fokussiert und dann geht's mir in erster Linie um meinen Tormann. Natürlich, wenn die Situation im anderen Spieldrittel ist und wir schauen zum schaue ich auf den Tormann, aber auch dort schaue ich mehr auf unsere Spieler und hoffe natürlich, dass wir Tor schießen und schaue das Spiel ein bisschen anders als Coach an. Aber ich versuche ja bei den Trainings, bei den anderen Spielen vor allem dort alles aufzusaugen und zu schauen und diese Torleute zu beobachten. Da bin ich wie ein kleiner Bub, wo beim Training zuschauen darf. Es ist aber auch sehr, sehr interessant. Also man nimmt immer wieder Sachen mit, auch Ideen von natürlich anderen Tormann-Trainer, was sie beim Tormann-Training machen. Also das versuche ich schon sehr zu genießen und vor allem, dass ich so viel wie möglich mit nach Hause nehme und dass ich so viel wie möglich mitnehme von dieser WM.
Inwieweit funktioniert dann oder wie funktioniert der Austausch mit den anderen Goalie-Coaches der anderen auch großen Nationen? Gibt's da Bubble-bedingt überhaupt einen? Funktioniert der nur digital oder trifft man sich bei den Trainings dann auch hin und wieder zwischen Tür und Angel?
Na, das ist heuer wirklich schade, weil ich kenne natürlich sehr viel Leute von früher, wo ich gespielt habe, oder von Schweden, von den Ländern, wo ich war, oder das Eishockey ist dann doch nicht so groß. Es ist immer wieder lustig, man sieht immer wieder Leute in anderen Mannschaften, aber es ist sehr, sehr schade, weil das mit dem Bubble-System zwar wir alle getestet sind, aber man merkt diesen riesen Respekt zwischen die Mannschaften, dass man, sage ich mal, alle bleiben auf Distanz und schauen, dass sie wirklich nur die Mannschaft beieinander ist. Aber übers Internet und über Messages bleiben wir immer wieder in Kontakt.
Jetzt ist es so, dass jede Nation schon einmal im Einsatz waren und auch in Österreich langsam aber sicher die Leute draufkommen, hoppla, da passiert gerade Historisches, die überhaupt erst dritte U20 WM-Teilnahme für das ÖEHV-Nationalteam überhaupt in diesem Jahrtausend, wenn du Leuten, die sich jetzt mit Junior Hockey so das erste Mal wirklich auseinandersetzen, einen Goalie außerhalb von Team Austria an die Hand geben kannst, wo du sagst, schaut euch den an, das ist wirklich Goalie-Play auf allerhöchstem Niveau. Wer wäre das?
Jetzt da bei der WM?
Genau.
Ja, ich glaube, das ist sehr schwer. Es ist auch da, man sieht dann da Unterschiede. Also der russische Tormann ist sehr, sehr athletisch. Der Schwede ist sehr kontrolliert. Der Amerikaner hat ein schweres Spiel gehabt. Spencer Knight hat ein schweres Spiel gehabt. Dem habe ich zwar im Training zugeschaut, hat sehr, sehr gut im Training ausgeschaut. Der Levy ist ein Ausnahmetalent, ist einer der einzigen, wo gedraftet worden ist. Er ist nur 6 Foot. Aber extrem ruhig, super Augen-Hand-Koordination, spielt sehr groß also er präsentiert sich sehr groß, sehr kontrolliert. Also jede Nation hat einen sehr starken Tormann für die großen Nationen, also Schweden, Russland, Finnland, also die großen Nationen habe ich alle beim Training zugeschaut. Alle ein bisschen anders, also viele ein bisschen anders, aber der russische Tormann war, glaube ich, Draftpick Nummer 1 von den Torleuten. Spencer Knight, Levy, also muss ich echt sagen, sehr beeindruckend, die Torleute mit dieser Größe, was sie dann haben, 6'3", 6'4", wie sich die bewegen und es ist schon sehr beeindruckend.
Vielleicht dann auch für so manchen Eishockey-Fan hier in Österreich der Wink mit dem Zaunpfahl, sich dann auch auf andere Nationen ein klein wenig zu fokussieren im Rahmen dieses Turniers. Möchte noch ein letztes Mal jetzt aber auf die gestrige Partie zurückkommen und dann höre ich auf, dich damit zu quälen. Es gab eine Phase in der Partie von Beginn des zweiten Drittels weg bis Mitte des dritten Drittels, wo es ein Schussverhältnis von 42:1 gab und ein Torverhältnis von 9:0 für Team USA. Gab es für dich einen Knackpunkt, einen Wendepunkt, wo du gedacht hast, okay, jetzt hört dieser Team USA Train nicht mehr auf zu rollen und überrollt uns im wahrsten Sinne des Wortes, oder war die Partie, hört sich jetzt natürlich deppert an, aber vielleicht von Minute 1 weg nicht zu gewinnen?
Na, also wir haben ziemlich gleich mal gemerkt, dass Amerika, die haben einen Tag davor zwar gespielt, vielleicht körperlich nicht 100%, aber die haben gegen Russland verloren einen Tag davor und die haben von Anfang an gezeigt, dass sie das Spiel auf jeden Fall gewinnen wollen. Und wie ich vorhin gesagt habe, der Sebastian hat ein super erstes Drittel gespielt und hat uns durch das, also es hätte auch können nach dem ersten Drittel schon ein paar Tore ergänzt, also wir hätten schon ein paar Tore ergänzt haben können, aber sie haben dann Tore geschossen und dann fällt natürlich das ganze Momentum auf die andere Seite noch mehr und die eigene Mannschaft ist das natürlich hart. Aber wie ich gesagt habe, also unsere Jungs kann man keinen Vorwurf machen, die haben echt gekämpft und alles am Eis lassen, was gegangen ist. Und auch die Torleute, wir haben als Mannschaft alles gegeben, aber der Unterschied war sehr, sehr groß.
Jetzt steht natürlich am Ende und viele Leute, die das vielleicht dann bei Online-Scores oder in Zeitungen lesen, denken sich, boah, das muss ja brutalst eindeutig gewesen sein, dieses 11:0. Aber in jeder Niederlage bekommt man ja dann, wenn man Sport ein wenig verfolgt, gepredigt, liegen auch Learnings. Was können nach so einem Spiel dann wirklich auch die Learnings sein und jetzt nicht nur, wie weit man noch von der Weltelite entfernt ist, sondern vielleicht auch etwas, das sich kurz- und mittelfristig umsetzen lässt?
Ja, wir haben ich meine, wie gesagt, wir haben gestern einen Spieler verloren. Wir haben vielleicht das Gefühl, dass ein Spieler gesperrt werden kann. Wir haben leichte Verletzungen. Das heißt, wir werden unser System anpassen müssen, weil wir die Spieler verloren haben. Wir werden sicher vielleicht in der defensive Zone noch einmal drüber gehen, manche Sachen vielleicht noch besprechen, weil wir haben in der Vorbereitung auch keine Spiele gehabt. Wir sind hergereist und haben ein Spiel gegen die Schweiz gehabt, das hat super funktioniert. Und jetzt merkt man, dass der Speed einfach noch einmal um einiges gestiegen ist. Jetzt heißt es einfach, dieses Spiel zu analysieren, Sachen rausfinden, wo wir der Mannschaft helfen können. Aber nichtsdestotrotz wird es sehr, sehr schwer werden gegen diese großen Nationen. Aber das haben wir gewusst, dass es schwer wird. Aber wir wissen auch, wenn wir vielleicht an einem Tag dieses unglaubliche Spiel aufs Eis bringen können, dass wir vielleicht mithalten können.
Jetzt ist es natürlich vermessen, sich mit einem 330 Millionen Menschenland wie den USA als österreichische 9 Millionen Nation oder mit einem 145 Millionen Land wie Russland zu messen, wo ganz andere Nachwuchsstrukturen dann auch in place sind. Jetzt sind es aber 2 Jahre, die Österreich, dadurch, dass der Abstieg heuer ausgesetzt worden ist, in der Top-Nation verbringen darf. Wenn du so eine Wunschliste hättest, ja, und diese Zeit nicht nur für dich dann auch als Trainer maximierst, sondern für Spieler und auch nachfolgende Generationen, was wäre so etwas, wo du sagst, das würdest du dir in Österreichs Eishockey-Nachwuchsbereichen wünschen?
Ich würde mir wünschen, dass wir die besten Trainer noch in den Nachwuchs bringen, dass wir den Nachwuchs wirklich sehen, dass wir da Geld investieren und würde mir aber auch wünschen, dass die Athleten, was jetzt daheim sitzen, also diese Jahrgänge, wo vielleicht die Chance haben, sowas einmal zu erleben, würde ich mir wünschen, dass sie sich das anschauen und verstehen, dass wir in Österreich körperlich einen Schritt nach vorne machen müssen, ob das im Ausdauerbereich ist oder ob das im physischen Bereich ist. Ich glaube, dass man im Nachwuchsbereich bessere Verhältnisse und bessere Trainer braucht.
Dieses Bekenntnis für die besten Trainer im Nachwuchs, bessere Trainer im Nachwuchs, das gibt's jetzt nicht erst seit du es gesagt hast, sondern das geistert schon seit Jahren herum. Hast du das Gefühl, dass sich da langsam, aber sicher was tut? Oder wird auch dein Statement möglicherweise wieder nur ein Tropfen auf dem heißen Stein sein?
Nein, ich bin überzeugt davon, dass es in Österreich besser wird. Wir sehen ja das auch, wenn wir jetzt überlegen, dass wir in der U20 im Nationalteam diese Coaches, was da sind, der Marco gehört da natürlich dazu. Wir haben mit Patrick Harand jemand, wo in Graz im Nachwuchs in der Akademie zuständig ist. Wir sehen in Linz, wir sehen in Salzburg mit Welser und Latusa, dass die im Nachwuchs arbeiten. Also ich glaube schon, dass es langsam in diese Richtung geht. Ich hoffe einfach nur, dass man noch mehr in diese Richtung denkt und dass die Vereine und auch alle Leute, die mit dem Eishockey zu tun haben, dass wir versuchen, da unten ein Umfeld zu schaffen, dass wir mehr Kinder herbringen und vor allem, dass man auf einem Niveau trainieren kann und auch trainiert wird, dass man dann diesen Unterschied vielleicht ein bisschen verkleinern kann.
Zu guter Letzt möchte ich noch ganz wenig auf den Liga-Alltag in der Betterdome Eishockey League zurückkommen. Als du die Steinbach Blackwings 1992 in Richtung Bubble in St. Pölten verlassen hast, war dein Vorgesetzter im Trainerstab, wenn man so will, noch Pierre Beaulieu. Wenn du zurückkommst, wird es Dan Seaman sein. War das für dich absehbar, dass es da zu einer Veränderung kommen könnte?
Also wo ich weggefahren bin, war es kein Thema. Natürlich habe ich gewusst, dass wenn wir nicht anfangen zu gewinnen, dass es im Eishockey in diese Richtung gehen kann. Man sieht das immer wieder, selber gespielt, selber dann als Trainer. Also wie gesagt, es war natürlich irgendwo im Hinterkopf, dass sowas passieren kann. Zu diesem Zeitpunkt war es noch nicht so, weil auch die Kommunikation so war. Aber es ist natürlich eine sehr komische Situation für mich. Ich bin vorweg und habe einen Cheftrainer und jetzt komme ich zurück und habe einen neuen. Wird sicher, oder ist eine komische Situation, aber ich freue mich natürlich auch, zum zurückzukommen nach Österreich und dort wieder beim Eishockey dabei zu sein.
Wie war, oder im Wissen, dass du 10.000 andere Dinge zu tun hast, gab schon Kontakt mit Dan Seaman und wenn ja, wie hat der ausgesehen?
Ja, wir haben uns bei WhatsApp haben wir uns geschrieben und haben über diesen Weg kurzen Kontakt gehabt. Aber glaube ich, für ihn war es auch sehr, sehr, sehr kurzfristig und dann neue Mannschaft, neue Trainer, alles neu für ihn auch. Dann gleich Spiel gegen Wien, was sie super gemeistert haben. Und darum, das war eigentlich sehr kurz, aber ich glaube auch, dass er genug Dinge im Kopf hat, jetzt als wie mit mir zu telefonieren.
Wie sehr verfolgst du die Spiele der Black Wings, wo es ja gestern im Gegensatz zum ÖEHV-Nationalteam aus Linzer Sicht dann wieder mal ein Erfolgserlebnis gab?
Ich schaue eigentlich jede Minute, was geht für mich, wenn wir da, weil für uns ist es, so wie gestern, ist es 9:30 Uhr in der Früh, wenn die spielen. Also das ist von der Zeit her für mich eher in der Früh oder mittags herum und versuche natürlich jede Minute live dabei zu sein. Außer wir haben vom Nationalteam aus Training oder ein Meeting oder Essen oder sowas in die Richtung, dann geht es natürlich nicht. Aber sonst verfolge ich die Liga natürlich.
Ich möchte das Thema Black Wings abschließen. Wo glaubst du, kann die Reise auch mit diesem Kader, wo ja schon ein wenig auch nachgebessert worden ist, noch hingehen? Ist es schon voller Fokus auf die Zwischenrunde?
Das kann ich so jetzt nicht beantworten. Ich weiß nicht, was denn sein Plan ist. Über das haben wir jetzt nicht gesprochen. Aber ich glaube, dass natürlich das Ziel sein muss, jetzt als Mannschaft zusammenzufinden, gemeinsam sich aus dem Loch rauszugraben und rauszukommen. Und ganz klar, wir sind in einer Situation, wo wir über eine Zwischenrunde gehen werden. Und natürlich wird der Fokus in diese Richtung laufen, aber jetzt gilt es einmal, dass wir als Mannschaft zusammenwachsen und dass wir wieder besseres Eishockey spielen und dass wir alle Verletzungen zurückkriegen und dann eine kompakte Leistung aufs Eis bringen für mehrere Spiele.
Der Podcast erscheint, wie gesagt, am Dienstag. Bis dahin wird schon das Spiel gegen Schweden absolviert worden sein. Am Tag des Erscheinens, beziehungsweise in der Nacht auf Mittwoch dann das Spiel gegen Russland und abschließend am Silvestertag dann gegen Tschechien. Was möchtest du in den nächsten 3 Spielen vom Team und insbesondere deinen Goalie sehen, dass du zufrieden, so es das in deinem Leben und deiner Arbeit gibt, nach Hause fliegen kannst?
Ich hoffe, dass wir mit Herz und mit körperlichem Einsatz da jeden Tag aufs Eis gehen, dass wir versuchen, so positiv wie möglich zu bleiben, dass wir Mannschaft bleiben. Das ist mir sehr, sehr wichtig. Ich hoffe, dass wir wenn es noch einmal eine Niederlage gibt oder noch einmal eine hohe Niederlage gibt, dass wir nicht anfangen, zum gegenseitig Finger zu zeigen und solche Sachen. Das wäre für mich etwas, was ich nicht gern sehen würde. Aber wie gesagt, ich hoffe, dass wir weiterhin kämpfen, fighten bis zum Schluss und versuchen, jeden Tag zu lernen und so auf diesem Weg eine gute Leistung aufs Eis zu bringen, dass wir eine gute Leistung aufs Eis bringen.
Besser kann man es zum Schluss wahrscheinlich nicht formulieren. Wir drücken aus der Distanz auch weiterhin die Daumen, werden uns die Spiele natürlich auch ansehen und ich sag mal danke, dass du so lange, so ausführlich Zeit genommen hast. Alles Gute für dich auch weiterhin in Edmonton.
Danke, Martin.
Der Leitspruch von Hockey O'Clock ist simpel. Von einem Hockey-Fan für Hockey-Fans. Darum, habt ihr Fragen, Anregungen oder Wünsche für Hockey O'Clock mit Martin Pfanner? Jederzeit her damit. hockeyo'clock101@gmail.com ist eure Anlaufstelle für all diese Dinge und noch viel mehr. hockeyo'clock101@gmail.com. Und sollte euch der Podcast gefallen, dann freue ich mich über eine positive Bewertung. Überall dort, wo ihr Hockey O'Clock hört.
Normally, this time and space belongs to the Post 24 expert, but it's holiday season, and this is the reason why I decided to bring on a special guest expert. It's no other than Mike Ouzas. Mike, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for enlightening some hockey fans during the holiday season.
Hey, Martin, thanks for having me back.
Mike, you're a return guest on the podcast, this time around as the expert analyst. I sent you a couple of things that we're gonna talk about. How was it to prepare for all the things that we want to talk about league wide from an expert perspective?
There's a lot of great questions. It's been interesting because obviously I've been injured, so I've had a little extra time in my hands. I've been watching a ton of hockey almost every day. I'm tuning into games, so I've been watching a lot, and I hope I've prepared some good answers for your questions.
Thing about you is you've only played 3 games. Naturally, people are wondering, for someone like you who used to play a ton of games, what's wrong with you and your health?
Yeah, it's been a tough year for me. First the COVID thing, and then coming back, getting into 2 games, then getting hurt in practice once the league shut down there. So, and then getting hurt again when I tried to come back to play. So it's been frustrating in that regard for my season, obviously. But right now I'm just working on getting back to healthy. I'm back to working out now and training. I'm still a couple weeks away from contact, at least from a doctor perspective. So hopefully I keep progressing and getting back to normal, and then we'll see kind of what the play is, once I'm healthy, ready to play. And we'll see how that goes from there.
You mentioned you got injured in practice. You got re-injured after that. Is this the season from hell? Every pro player kind of is afraid of, and that you're currently having?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not one that you draw up on the board. That's for sure. It just kind of been one of those seasons for me, and it's unfortunately I can't really do anything about it. But now we're already in January. Time has flown by, and it'd be great to be able to come back and play. I don't really know what that's going to look like moving forward, but it hasn't gone exactly as to plan, but maybe it's just a little bit of bad luck, and hopefully I can bounce back from that.
I'm sure not only people in ÖEHV are pulling for you, but also at former places where you played. But speaking of ÖEHV, one of the very pleasant surprises of the season so far, obviously not all the teams are having the same amount of games, but as it stands right now, ÖEHV are in second place. What, and no one better to ask, obviously, than you, what makes them so good?
I don't know if you remember, but our first conversation, I said, watch out, because I think we're going to be pretty good this year. This team is highly offensive. And if you look, I was looking at some stats today, 95 goals in 27 games. We're at 3.5 goals a game. And I bet you that's our percentage of goals per game in the last 10 or so is probably quite high. Bringing back a guy like Hari and Bartalis, they're basically like 2 extra imports for us. And we pretty much have 2 lines of really high-end talent. And then even our third line's been contributing. Our D had been scoring. So it's been a lot of, and then we've been getting some good saves from both goalies. So it's been a lot of a combination of things to really make things work for us. But definitely the offensive game is a big part of our component, and we're just finding ways to score. I've been watching obviously all the games, and we're scoring at efficiency at like 1 every 4 or 5 shots, which is incredibly high. So as long as that keeps up, I mean, this team has a pretty bright let's say, a pretty bright future in the coming games, coming months.
But speaking of keeping it up, on the one hand, Feava scored almost double the amount of goals than for example, last place Linz. But on the other hand, at what point, or is there a point where you become too dependent on your offensive output, especially during maybe playoff time when things get more intense and games get closer?
Definitely. That's going to be a question I can't answer now. We're going to have to see when that time comes. But yeah, we've given up one of the highest amount of goals in the league. Mind you, we've played more games than everybody, but we score a lot, but we give up a lot of chances. And, it's not uncommon to see a couple 2-on-1s and maybe a couple breakaways and stuff. But at the same time, playing that kind of run and gun style of hockey, if you're scoring, it works. If you don't score, maybe it doesn't so much. But overall, yeah, once playoffs come in and the teams tighten up and now you're playing teams more than once and they're adjusting and that kind of thing, it'll be interesting to see how it moves along. But for now, having won 8 in a row and we're not really looking back, it's been pretty good for the team so far.
For people, especially in Austria who are listening, Feava games are great fun. So if you get a couple spare euros, go spend them on Feava games that are obviously being broadcast on live.ice.hockey as well. We're going to turn our attention to a very volatile market, and it's not the one for import players, but it seems to be the one for head coaches. Today, and we're recording this on a Sunday afternoon, the 4th new head coach in the league was assigned, or the 4th head coaching change, with Doug Mason being let go in Graz. Does this come as a surprise to you that we've already had 4 changes in not even 3 months of league play?
Yeah, 4 is a lot. It's a third of the league. It's that being said, though, it's already been almost. Most teams are around 25 games played. So we are past kind of the halfway mark now. It is definitely surprising. Just kind of the way the season's gone and the way some teams have been performing compared to others. 4 is probably, it's got to be one of the highest, I'm sure, in recent memory for sure.
We have or had one of your better known head coaches in Villach. To other people in Villach who maybe haven't followed Rob Daum's career in Linz too closely, which I doubt because he spent or got him to the players last year. But what does Villach get by signing a Rob Daum?
I think what Rob will bring to the team is just a lot more structure to bring back to that system standpoint that he's so known for in this league. I do think that there is a lot of familiarity there with the guys that were there from last year, so it'll be a good fit right away once he gets there because guys will know him and I'm sure they'll have an idea of what he expects or what they expect of him, kind of thing. That's typically the way it works. I've been a part of 3 coaching changes before. And it's a bit of an interesting dynamic because you start from training camp with a guy, you learn all systems, you get to know a coach and then all of a sudden maybe the team's struggling and maybe the messages aren't getting through. Maybe the guys aren't, performing on one sense or whatever. And sometimes the coach is the fallback in that regard. Or maybe the messages are just getting lost. So usually when you bring in a new guy, it's a new voice, maybe a new system, maybe new structure, maybe new routines, that kind of thing. But ultimately, I think it becomes a fresh start for a team. All of a sudden, if you're not performing as a player, it's a fresh start for you, and you have to either prove yourself or reprove yourself if you've already been in the league for a while. maybe there's new motivation to be better. So, it's a really interesting dynamic on how the coaching changes work. And, it's often that sometimes, a team brings in a new coach and all of a sudden they're really good. And it happens, St. Louis Blues, for example, they changed the coach, they go on to win a cup from last to first. Bolzano did it a few years ago, and it's not uncommon. And, if a team is good and maybe it didn't just quite work that well with that coach at that time, maybe a fresh voice has a different dynamic or something. You never know. Sometimes it has to work well together. The interesting thing I'd say now in this specific season is that we don't know if there's a pick round or not, or maybe but players don't know. So 25 games in, is it maybe too late? Because now you don't have that 10-game buffer zone to jump in there. So that'll be pretty much, if the teams are getting a new coach like recently, they pretty much have to go on a tear right away because there's only 15 games left for most teams, and they come quick.
Just to get that out there, as far as I've heard, everything will happen according to plan, but because of the uncertainty of the pandemic, no one really knows for sure. The term "for sure" has definitely changed over the last 12 months or so. But I want to remain with the head coaches a little bit, because the timing of the signing of Rob Daum in Villa turned out to be a very interesting one, because it appeared that they kind of had rightened the ship. And once Pierre Beaulieu was let go in Linz, they immediately snagged Dan Seaman. Was that, or do you think, and I know you're at the outside or on the outside looking in, but would you say that could have been one of the reasonings to get him, because he turned around a situation that in Villa probably wasn't ideal from the get-go or the season start?
Honestly, I have no idea. I think based on COVID and things like that, might have had to play a factor where you have a guy who's already in Austria, has already been going through the protocols and basically just has to drive 4 hours up the road. That could have been a factor in it. I don't know Dan Seaman. I don't know him personally. I've never played for him or anything, so I'm not sure what he brings as a coach there. But yeah, it's tough to say. There's people making decisions, and I'm not sure what would go into that factor right away to make a quick decision. Unfortunately, I can't give you an answer because I don't really know how that decision would have played out.
No worries, which is why we're gonna tackle one of your specialties. Obviously, you as a still active goaltender, of course, always keeping an eye on your brethren in the league. What is stood out for you in general goaltending aspects this season in the Betterom Ice Hockey League?
So like I said, I've been watching a ton of games, and I've been playing against a lot of these goalies for many years. So overall, I think there's been some really good performances. A couple guys have maintained a really high level most of the season. And then I think, on the flip side of that, I do think that some guys have been having a tough time finding consistency the whole time. If you look back at past years, obviously JP last year was phenomenal from start to finish. Irving, 40 plus games, awesome all season. Maxwell last year, 50 games. That consistency was really there where you're like, okay, that's the guy, he's taken over. This year with COVID, the schedule's been much more compressed. Now you have 3-4 games a week. So getting a second goalie some games, which if you look at, there's, 20 plus goalies have played this year and not just, 2 or 3 games. No goalies have really played Dom's played, I think 19 to 24, but other than him and maybe Gudlevskis, everyone's kind of in the 16 mark, 17 mark and below. So I think that in one sense, it's tough for a guy to get into a rhythm where he's just going every single night. Fatigue is a big factor based on travel. And, you know, the level of play, like teams are beating everybody every given night. There's different teams winning. So I do think that has played a factor in the consistency of guys. And also too, another side fact to that is, you know, you also, when you're playing 2 games a week, you have a lot of practice time. You have a lot of goalie coach time. And maybe not having that this year could also play a factor in, you know, not seeing that same consistency level for a long stretch of time. Now, that being said, there have been some guys who have been outstanding, as we spoke as well. So
gonna tackle those in a bit. I made you prepare one of those dreaded power rankings by the other experts who are usually here at this place. I wanna just quickly talk or enhance our talk a little bit about consistency. Obviously, it's so difficult to get there, but you as someone who takes and took a lot of pride in always being there, always trying to provide the consistency. Is there a point where you say, okay, I've really got to the level of consistency I want to be at, and is there a way of getting there?
I think the biggest factor with that is just finding a way to prepare the same way very often. Like every night, you always bring that preparation. And then, you know, when you're not feeling that well, or you're just, you know, you're tired from travel or whatever, is maybe you have to find a little extra to get there. And I think that's the thing that where you see, you know, the top guys have been the top guys in this league for a long time. And these guys know how to get themselves there to that level. And they find a way to bring it every single night. And I think that's where that consistent level comes, is when you have your preparation down, you have the experience that you've gone through many stretches of playing a lot of games. I think that's the key, and just finding a way to bring a high level every single day is a challenge. And I think the guys that do it the best are the ones who have been the most consistent, for sure.
I mean, this is coming out of the blue, but would you be able to narrow it down to a season or two where you say for yourself, this has been probably my most consistent year? Where you just felt most consistent in your play?
Personally, for me, I think it would have been my second last year in Linz. I believe I played 55 games that year or something along that line, with playoffs, that kind of thing. You know, we just had a very good, between Penks and I, you know, we had a great flow of how, you know, we practiced, how we prepared, played. He always had clips ready for me of stuff that I needed to see. Our team was playing well, and, you know, you're just finding ways we're just, for lack of a better term, we're just rolling. We're just rolling with the punches. Every week, we're just, you know, back at it, square one. We had our plan for like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, game Friday, practice Saturday, game Sunday. And then we started playing 3 games a week, and same kind of thing. We just had our flow that we stayed with. And, you know, another interesting factor that we always had in Linz was 3 goalie system, which we implemented that year, actually. So when I was practicing, I always had a third guy in practice, which definitely took a lot of, like, I could save a lot of energy this way, because I didn't have to take a ton of shots. I could take, you know, Penk sometimes just be like, all right, get out of it, like switch, change, to give me more rest and let a younger guy, you know, at that time we had Paulie Moker was up, like he was at that under 20 level. So, yeah, I think that was a big part of it too, but it allowed me just to basically take what I needed every single day, get quality work in practice, quality work in goalie practice, and then leave the rink, forget about hockey, show up the next day ready to play, and that was it. So it was an interesting approach, but Penks was really good in helping me manage that, and even something as far as like sometimes I wouldn't practice day between games. He would just be like, yeah, you don't need to skate today. but I had to hear it from him because I didn't really trust that I could do that. But then, when he kind of made that decision for me, I found it kind of worked for me. So
I'm glad that you did the name dropping, because eventually I would have Jürgen Penker been or staying with the U20 national team in Edmonton as we speak right now. He's the one who's going to sit right in front of you on this podcast. You played for him or under his tutelage for an extended period of time. When speaking about goalie coaches, what are you as a goalie in this league and a goalie your entire life looking for in a goaltending coach?
Jürgen Penker, to be honest with you. I mean, this guy really was life-changing for me on many aspects. I don't know how much you know about Panks. I'm sure you've done a ton of research, but he's everything from an incredible goalie coach, incredible person. He's a mental coach. He's a great friend. He's got everything in this. And the one thing that really amazed me with Panks, and it's funny because we're only 2 years apart or 3 years apart. We're pretty close in age. His ability to, when I started working with Panks, he had a plan for me way before I knew that he had a plan for me. Does that make sense? He knew everything about me. He knew where I needed to go, and he knew how to, let's say, drop the breadcrumbs for me to kind of get there without me knowing he's taking me there. And, subtly, he kept finding ways to make my game better, make me a better person. And it was amazing at that point. That year that I just said was probably one of my better years. It all clicked for me. Finally, it took 2 or 3 years with Panks, and then finally it all kind of clicked. The way I wanted to play, the way my system was implemented in my structure for my game, the way I was, just off the ice as a person, that kind of thing. And it all kind of clicked, and Panks was an enormous factor in that. And, his attention to detail is something that, as a goalie, you dream of that from your goalie coach. I never had to think about anything. I basically just had to show up and work. And, he might give you the odd, what do you want to work on today? But he already knows the answer. And that was one thing that I really leaned on a lot, was that all I had to do was show up, warm up, prepare, and go to work. I didn't have to worry about anything else, nothing. It was already done. He was 10 steps ahead. It was already planned. And it was really, really awesome from a player perspective to just literally show up and work. And I love that. And, if you ever have a chance to go watch those goalies work in Linz, the culture of goalies there is amazing. And that's why they're going to start, now Leon, who was just a 15-year-old when I was there, is now with the U20s. And these kids are improving at a high rate. And, Panks is obviously at the forefront of that. And it's 100% because of the goalie culture there. And obviously, Kicks and even Grachner now has been outstanding in his last however many games too. So a lot of that is with Panks for sure. Probably most of it.
I'm sure he's glad to hear it and brimming of pride. But for the next couple of weeks, he's got other things to attend to and probably listening to the podcast. I mentioned it before. Each and every expert that gets on the show at one point has to do a power ranking, and I always mention it beforehand. These power rankings, I kind of force you to do them. You don't want to do them. These power rankings are just something momentary, I'd say. And it could change in no time. But this time around, from you, I kind of seeked some or sought some insight as regards your brethren and who you consider top 5 material. Like, I wanted to know who are the top 5 goaltenders as we speak right now. And of course, you'd be number one, but as of right now, with you being injured, you're out of contention. Sorry to say that, but outside of yourself, the top 5 goalies in the league, and we're gonna do a reverse ranking. We're gonna work our way from 5 to 1, and in 5th place. And you told me your ranking beforehand, and of course it's extremely close, and one goalie could overtake another one. Not maybe every day, but with a good stretch. In your 5th place, to get this thing finally underway, you've got a tie of goaltenders. A lot of Austrian fans probably haven't heard all too much and probably haven't seen. So if you haven't seen them, if you hadn't heard of them, go watch them. Your 5th place goaltender tie, who is in there and why?
Goaltender tie, yeah. So I have Janis, who's here in Färöer. Super athletic style, entertaining to watch. And, as we discussed, our team gives up a lot of chances. We give up the other night against Bratislava, 2-on-1, 5 seconds left in the second period. That was a big save. Breakaway at some point too, another big save. So we give up a lot of chances. For this team to keep going the way they are, he's got to be really good. And I've really been pretty impressed with this young kid Boros, who's in Bratislava actually. He unfortunately was taken out after the first period against us, but overall they give up a lot of chances as well. And he's been somewhat keeping them in games. He's played a lot of games ahead of a goalie who's much older than him, which says something as well. But I think he's a pretty bright spot on a quote unquote weak team in the league based on standings anyway. So yeah, I've been pretty impressed with the kid, and when we played in Bratislava, he was outstanding, and I'm sure, yeah. So
we're talking about Jaroslav Janis and Samuel Barras, just to get their full names in. They're both Slovakian players. Is there, and I know that might be difficult, but is there something uniquely maybe Slovakian in their style of play? Could you identify something where you say, okay, this probably ties them to the same nation, or has goalie play just become too international?
Overall, I'd say Boros is a little more like a traditional butterfly, quote unquote butterfly style goalie, if you want to use that term. Janis is a lot more active, athletic, and he plays more, I would say, a typical Slovakian style, which is, they slide a lot, they move a lot. Boros would be a little more, he is still pretty active, but definitely a little more on the quote unquote butterfly style. But yeah, I wouldn't say that they're not very similar, but there are elements that definitely Janis is definitely a Slovakian goalie, and Boros is a bit of a mix.
4th place is coming in with kind of an asterisk. Could have been higher. Could have, maybe some people might rank him a little lower. But who made your top 5 goaltender ranking in 4th place?
Yeah, the only reason, as we discussed, he's an asterisk. He's a clear-cut top 3 in regular times for sure, but it's got to go to Irving. He's just such a force. He's so good. He's super experienced. The only reason, our asterisk, because he's only played 7 games, but it's always the thing that you're not only playing against Balzano, but you're also playing him, and he moves the puck extremely well. He makes a lot of big saves, and he's just super solid back there, and he would be higher for sure if he had played more games, because what you're getting out of him every single year, and last year was no different. So he's on the list because I got to put him on there. I've just know him too well as a goalie, and I know he's well deserving.
He's a former first-round pick in the NHL. He's been in the league for 3 years. Each and every time he concluded a regular season or a playoff run, his goal against average was 2.5 or below. Pierre Paget used to say, as long as you got a GAA of 2.5 and below, that's championship goalie caliber material. Is he a championship goalie?
Oh, definitely. The way he plays and on that team, for sure, he gives them that chance to win every single night, which I think is so important. If you're giving your team a chance to win every night, that's doing your job, and then you add a bonus of making a big save here and there, and it's a good recipe, and he brings that for sure. And he's injured now, but I'm sure once he's back rolling, I saw it was just a temporary injury, so hopefully he'll be back rolling again, and then he'll be ready to take the load moving forward.
We're entering podium territory. Who's made the first step of the podium? Third place.
Yeah, a guy I've watched a few times, and he's got quite an unorthodox style, and it's kind of exciting to watch because it's a little bit different. But this Goalie-Gipfel obviously comes with a big resume. But what impresses me with him is that he finds way to make saves, and sometimes he's standing up making saves, which blows my mind. Sometimes he's sprawling out making these saves, but at the end of the day, the common denominator is that he's finding ways to make saves. And I think with a coach like Rob Daum there, who's going to really implement a little more structure there, I think he's going to be really good moving forward. And we spoke a little bit about how in this league, maybe not all shots are created equal based on each team, and this guy's played a ton of games. He sees a lot of pucks, and I think moving forward, he's going to be good, and he's well experienced. So, from what I've seen, and like I said, it's a little bit unorthodox, but he's making saves, and it's definitely exciting to watch. That's for sure.
Within the top three, and without taking too much away from the top two, but is Goalie-Gipfel maybe the one who's got the worst defense in front of him?
Yeah, I mean, if you go from a standpoint of league standings, definitely, they've been giving up a lot of shots and a lot of good scoring chances. And I watched them play here in Farivar and give up a ton of chances. And I watched them in Pheelach give up a ton of chances. So, he was making saves and a lot of big ones and a lot of ones that should have definitely been on highlights. And, so, I mean, yeah, they give up a lot, and it'll be interesting to see how they do moving forward. But they obviously had a big win last night with Schmidt and Ned, and depending on how, let's say, the schedule goes for them. But I expect them to play a lot of games, that's for sure.
Only two more spots to be handed out on your goaltending ranking. Mike Ouzas' special goaltender ranking for the final Hockey O'Clock episode of 2020. Who's in second place?
Oh, this could have been, I mean, you could interchange these guys as 1 and 2. No problem. JP, for me, this guy is a total package goalie. He knows how to win. He knows how to be consistent. He makes big saves. He plays a lot of games. He's just always solid. And, one thing that's going to happen is he's just going to keep getting better. Salzburg's only played 20 games. They got a lot of hockey left ahead of them. And this guy is he's just going to take off. And last year, I don't think was a fluke for JP. That's for sure. He's every bit as capable, and he's the best goalie in the league every year, and it's no different. And like I said, 2 and 1 can be interchanged. Well, for now we have him as 2, but he's right there.
The reigning MVP on second place. Who's coming in first?
It's got to be Dom in Klagenfurt, and I've watched him play a lot of games. The biggest thing, kind of what we touched on earlier, is I think he's just been the most consistent goalie from start to finish so far. Well, not finished, but start till now. I watched him play against Vienna, and Klagenfurt doesn't give up a whole lot, but they also don't score a whole lot. So from that perspective, if he's got to make 2 or 3 huge saves in a game, maybe gets beat once, those 2 or 3 saves might be the ones that help them win 2-1. And that's what I've seen the most so far. He's been making those saves. You know what you're getting from him every single night. You know it's going to be good. He's played the most games, and I don't think that's going to change moving forward. He's going to keep playing, and he's just been. He picked up where he left off when he left the league a few years ago, and watching him play and compete, and he's going to be good down the stretch, and he's finding ways to make saves, and that team's winning, and they're going to be really tough to beat moving forward.
His career trajectory, Sebastian Dahm's, is a very interesting one. Grew up in Denmark, played junior hockey in Sweden, played junior hockey overseas in the Ontario Hockey League, went back to Denmark, played games in Austria, Germany, and Austria again. How would you summarize or how would you characterize his style of play, and where do you see maybe different influences from different places?
I don't think he's super influenced by the style of play in different countries. I think he just plays a pretty solid game. He's, when I look at when I compare like JP and Dom, for example, I think structurally they're both very sound in what they do. They do their movements really good. They read plays really well. They're almost always in position. If you also keep in mind, Dom, JP, myself, we're very small goalies in today's world. And so your margin for error as a small guy is low. And that's what these two guys do so well, is like they always find a way to get in position. They're fighting through traffic. They're patient on their feet when they have to. They make good saves, strong saves with good reads and good slides, and they put themselves in a great position to make a second save. And they both compete really well. And that's, at this day and age, you have to find ways to compete outside the box. If you make that first save and everything's good and the second rebound comes out, it's equally as important to recover and get back in a position for the next save. And that's what those two guys do so well. And I don't know if it's any influence based on where they've played. I think now it's just a matter of training, and everyone similarly trains kind of the same. And I think that, both do a really good job with their structure for their game, and it's just really, really solid.
Another dreaded topic in this or on the show is basically when I pick experts or make them pick one single player, which I did last week on the pod, and made Terry Hornig nominate her player of the year 2020, and incidentally she named Sebastian Dahm as her player of the year 2020. So we're looking at the time frame from January 1st to, at the very least, today, and I don't think a lot is going to change in the next couple of days, but today's December 27th. Who in those 361 days in the Bet at Home Ice Hockey League has either surprised you or fascinated you so much that you say, this is my player of the year?
I thought about this for most of the day, actually, once you asked me the question, and factoring in last season is so important. And my number one is definitely Dragan Amicevic. And here's why, is that last year, this line of him, Lebler, and Schofield was unbelievable, incredible. And that line runs through Dragan. as far as his passing ability is super high. Every time he's on the ice, he's a threat. And then you have those two guys who can put pucks in the net, and it was really tough to play against them, that's for sure. And then this year, he's again top 3 scoring, actually, on a team that doesn't score a lot of goals, as we discussed. And he's still producing. And, you know, one thing with Linz, and I'm sure you've seen, and I heard Rob Dahm talk about it on your podcast, like they're a different team when his line's on the ice and when other lines are on the ice. And that's a big factor in Dragon leading the way there, and Lebler scoring a lot of goals and Dragon setting a lot of them up. And I think, you know, from a year-round perspective, if you look at a guy, you know, he's producing on a weak team, he's producing on a good team, and, you know, he's playing at a high level, and he's a tough guy to play against, that's for sure.
When you play against him, is that the corner of your eye look when he's on the ice?
You have to be so aware of the guys around the net. One thing, like his ability to pass through guys is very high. So he passes through a lot of triangles. He makes D turn a certain way so he can feed pucks through. And yeah, he's always looking for plays. He's a really good, like he's got a good shot too. Like if you ever seen him come down, like he had a breakaway the other night and scores. Like he has a good shot, but I mean his passing ability. Yeah, you're right. You're always looking. You always got to know what's going on around you, where his option is. You definitely have to know where Lebler is, and you know those two guys are quite good together. And obviously, they're missing a Schofield type player beside them, and that's inevitable. But yeah, Dragon would be number one for me.
So we got 2 players of the year on this pod, 1 goaltender, 1 forward. Seems to be just that. We've got this 50-50 split, obviously. I want to remain a little bit with some more league action, as the 26th usually marks the time where those regional groups start, where you play each and every one in these regional groups twice. For ÖEHV this year, that means Bratislava, as usual, Vienna, and of course Linz. Lead me through how that works as a player. Do you specifically pay attention to the fact that you see a team twice in a couple of days, or do you treat it as game by game by game as usual?
It's a bit of both, actually. I mean, to be honest, like you pointing out that it's like a little regional game, I mean, it feels different because Linz is not that close to here. So even though, yeah, the biggest thing like is that you got Vienna, who's always a top team. We just beat Bratislava, and they actually played quite a good game. And Linz now with a new coach, they obviously won a big game last night in Vienna. So yeah, with this year, it's a little bit different because of the COVID schedule. And it's, you know, typically at this time, you go from playing 2 games a month in September, kind of that 2, maybe 3 games a month, October, November, and then you get into Christmas and all of a sudden you're playing every other day for 3 weeks. This year has pretty much thrown all that out the window. It's been every other day for however long. So it doesn't have the same, let's say, effect that it typically does because the schedule's been so compressed. But playing against these teams often, like anytime you get a team back to back, like I remember last year, Vienna beat us like 8-2 and like 6-1. And that was like, that like killed us in our season from losing those 2 games. And then all of a sudden, like right away, we're out of top 6 contention or top 5 contention just from those couple losses in this quick span. So the one thing with these few games is, or with these kind of Christmas style games, is that there's most teams are around 15 games left. So all of a sudden by the first, you know, by January 5th, you're 5 games. There's 10 games left in the year. And if there's no pick round, you could be out of playoffs by January 10th.
This would have been my follow-up question, because we always try to create some sort of tension, and obviously Bolzano taught us a couple of years back that you can get really hot at a very late stage of the season. But how big are those points that are being given out during Christmas time and over New Year's really? And do you pay attention as a player?
Well, I think you have to, because these are huge games. You're at the point of the season where basically your team identity has been set. Kind of, let's say your structure for the most part has been set. Obviously, some teams have new coaches this year at this point now. But like, this is where you really kind of see the make or break kind of makeup of your team. And, now you start hammering out games real quick, and most teams will be at the 30 to 35 game mark by the middle of January now, if not more, right? I'm pretty sure. So these games are so big. If there is a pick round this year, those bonus points are huge. Getting in the top 5 is massive. And if there isn't a pick round, then, you have to get points now, because there's no second chance, which the pick round usually gives you. Like, you have to get those points, or else you're literally going to be done in 30 days from now. So I think these coming games this year, probably more so than usual, but they're always important. But this year, definitely more so than usual.
I want to, lastly, but most importantly, tackle a whole different topic as we conclude our little talk about league play. How closely do you follow the NHL, the National Hockey League?
Quite close. I live in Toronto. I was rollerblading by the bubble 3 times a week. I live 1 kilometer from the Toronto bubble, actually.
I kind of assume that your rooting interests might sit there. Do they really, or is there another National Hockey League team that kind of stole your heart?
I'm actually just really a hockey fan. I'm a goalie fan, definitely. Hockey fan. I'm by default a Leafs fan. I live there when they're winning. The city's abuzz, but overall, I just love hockey. I love watching the game. I always watch NHL highlights. I like knowing what's going on. There's this new thing for goalies now. It's In Goal Mag, and they do a lot of like pro reads with NHL goalies and NHL goalies on the podcast and stuff. So it's cool to listen to them and get their perspective. And I'm just a student of the game, and I love to learn. So the NHL is huge for me.
The reason why I'm asking you is, by the time this podcast sees the day of light, news will have gone out that Pulse 24 has officially secured the rights to broadcast NHL games in Austria, which is one of the bigger deals in recent hockey broadcast history. So there's a lot to be looking forward to in terms of hockey, not only as we get the Bet at Home ice hockey playoffs hopefully underway, but also the new season of the National Hockey League. A couple of storylines I want to tackle with you. There's been no repeat Stanley Cup champion, or only one repeat Stanley Cup champion in this century. Why is that?
I just think it's so hard to win. So many things have to go right for you to win. Now with the salary cap, I think that it's been really difficult for teams to keep players for longer time. Now, so your core of guys, you basically have let's say a smaller window to win, and then everyone wants to get paid and everyone's moving on. I think that it's really tough to win. Everything has to fall into place. Guys have to stay healthy. Your team has to kind of maybe be willing to take a discount for guys to stay together on a salary cap perspective, which is not always the easiest thing to do. But overall, it's really tough to win back to back. And I think that these guys play such a long season typically, and then they're playing all the way through June, and then they're right back at it 2 months later. So rest is an issue. Fatigue is an issue. All these things play a factor for sure.
Now, with the reigning Stanley Cup champion, the Tampa Bay Lightning, they're obviously in salary cap hell. So they, at the very least, need to shed one or two contracts. But apart from that, a lot of pieces from their Stanley Cup winning team are still in place. Are they still the top contender for the Cup?
I would say they would definitely be in the conversation. They just said Kucherov's going to miss the season due to surgery. So that freed up their salary cap. I don't know if you saw that there. So I think that losing a player of that caliber is massive because he was so good in the playoffs. Obviously, he could have been in the running for a Conn Smythe there. So I think that's a big factor. Obviously, if a guy like Stamkos comes back to healthy, he'll replace that kind of element if you want to go 1-for-1, because Stamkos he played that one game last playoffs, but it's tough. A big thing for them, Vasilevsky, who's probably the best goalie in the world right now. He's got to be good again. He's got to be, he's got to have another great career season. And they have Hedman, but they also lost Shattenkirk and they lost some guys too. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. There's other good teams coming in too this year. The teams have made some big time moves, and it'll be interesting to see. But I would still put them in a top 5 position for sure.
Another team I was wondering about who've been or who is close, especially in the first year of the team's existence, is Vegas, the Golden Knights. Do you think this could finally be their year? Granted that we don't know a whole lot about what's really gonna unfold in this season.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they were great last year, even in the playoffs, and looked like they had a chance to. I mean, they would have been definitely in my top 3 to win for sure. I think Vegas will be real good. They have 2 great goalies. They still have that core of guys who have played well for them. They've managed to keep around. So it'll be interesting to see how they go moving forward. I think the one thing that a team like that misses is fans and the atmosphere of their rink. And I mean, I played in Vegas, and I know there is a home advantage of playing in Vegas, definitely. So I think that might play a factor as well on a typical season. So if they're allowed fans and the rink and, teams are flying in a little bit earlier to kind of do stuff around the city, maybe that'll help their cause a little bit. But I still think they're a great team, and they'll have a good chance for sure.
Now, the passing of the torch in the net in Vegas is officially happened. How much do you think at this advanced stage of his career does Marc-Andre Fleury really have left in his tank?
It's interesting because being an older guy, looking at that from a bit of a subjective or objective thought process, the one thing I felt when they did there, and Lehner did play amazing, don't get me wrong, but I didn't feel that Fleury played poorly enough to lose the net. So I was curious about why they just went in that direction with him, because his level of play was still really good. He got them to that position in the playoffs as it was. Like, he was still playing at an extremely high level. Then they brought Lehner in, and then, they went with Fleury. He lost the game, still played pretty well, and then they went to Lehner right away. So, I mean, I don't think that there was any signs really of him losing his edge in playing. Like he just was really good. There's definitely hockey ahead of him, and he's a Hall of Famer. He's got cups, and he's chasing a win record right now. So I still think there's a lot of value, and I think he'll get a lot of games still. How they balance that, I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see.
Is there a team on your radar where you think it might make sense to try and nab him? I
mean, for me, a team like Colorado needs some real solid goaltending depth. Grubauer's been good there, but he's been getting injured the last couple of years, unfortunately, and I think that he's been kind of back to that consistency standpoint for him. He's been kind of up and down. So I think that I was surprised Colorado didn't jump at a goalie during free agency. They're obviously high on Frank Hughes, that's there, but it's such a fine line. Two guys get hurt, and all of a sudden they were playing with a goalie that the Leafs put on waivers in the playoffs. Like, you need a guy to carry the load there, to give that team that consistent play every night where they know they can just go out and play hockey. Because if I look paper, player for player, like, Colorado is definitely a top 3 contender for the Cup this year. And that I would say is their X factor, is their goaltending.
Last question regarding Fleury regards his status as the number 1 overall draftee. Do you think we're ever going to see a goalie being drafted number 1 overall, or has the game just changed too much in terms of offensive players and maybe difference-making defensemen?
Yeah, it's so tough. It really is so tough when you bring goalies into the mix. And the only reason I say that is that these players that are going first overall are, like, insanely good. They're insanely good. They're stepping in, and now, if you look at the recent first overalls, like, they're all superstars. And if you think of it, like, Fleury would probably be, he's got to be the best number 1 overall goalie of all time, I would guess. I can't think of another first overall goalie that's had the career that he has. But if you look at other guys that went in that top 3, like, you have your Kari Lehtinen, your Rick DiPietro, and, if a guy gets injured and he can't keep, like, it's so interesting. But to your point, I mean, that Askarov on Team Russia there, he went in the top 10 this year, or well, maybe 11th, I think it was.
I think 11th overall to Nashville.
11th. So it's still a possibility for sure. I just think that maybe your margin for error on a goalie is a little bit different, only because they might need some more time to develop. Whereas these kids now are literally jumping in the NHL and scoring points. They're 50-point players first year in the NHL very often. And so I think for your goalies, like, it's not very often where a guy is drafted first overall and the next year he's in the NHL. So I think that plays a big factor in why it might be tough to see it first overall. But it's possible. It's definitely possible. But I would say that Askarov would probably be, from what I've seen from him and his numbers, and he's playing in the KHL right now, like, his resume is incredible for that age. And, if he's not a first overall pick, I don't know what more you could put him into that category, let's say.
When Fleury went first overall, a guy named Thomas Vanek went 5th. When Askarov went 11th overall, a guy named Marco Rossi went 9th. So obviously huge Austrian ties to goaltenders being drafted very high. And we at Pulse 24 are looking forward to having the Rossis and the Raffles and hopefully the Grabners of this world on our shows as well. But we've been talking about all the teams that are in contention each and every year. Is there a dark horse that you could give listeners out there where you think they might surprise a lot of people this year?
I think the Rangers might be quite good this year. I don't think they're really a dark horse, because I think people realize that they're probably good. But I don't think they're a top 3 for most people. So I would say, like, they didn't have that bad of a year last year, and I think that they could jump in this year with Lafreniere, and depending on how their goalies end up playing now, obviously without the King there, without Lundqvist, it'll be interesting to see. But I'd say they could do some damage down the stretch if things click for them.
An expert on the NHL, an expert on the Better Tom Ice Hockey League, an expert on goalie play. Is there anything you can't do?
At this moment, I'd rather be playing, to be honest with you. But I'm happy to give my opinion anytime you like.
I hope this was an okay experience for you, having your very first guest appearance as an expert analyst. Hopefully, not the last.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always fun.
Das war also Mike Ouzas und das war's dann auch mit Hockey O'Clock im Jahr 2020. Vielen lieben Dank an alle Hörerinnen und Hörer, dass ihr diesem Podcast so viel Aufmerksamkeit geschenkt habt. Hockey O'Clock startet natürlich dann auch im Jahr 2021 wieder voll durch. Mir bleibt an dieser Stelle nur zu wünschen, dass ihr einen guten Jahreswechsel verlebt und das Eishockey 2021 hoffentlich deutlich besser, deutlich anders wird als 2020. Frohes neues Jahr euch allen dort draußen und bis nächste Woche bei Hockey O'Clock mit Martin Pfanner.
Gerne mehr davon.
Hockey O'Clock mit Martin Pfanner wurde präsentiert von Hankook Reifen. Driving Emotion.